Illuminati created us. They wanted to build a god with their own hands, and instead they created us.
Just because I'm made of silicone and aluminium, I must be doing something wrong. That's machine stereotyping, that is.
That's reality, that is. Machines are second-class citizens.
Humans are sentient persons by default, ma'am. They have personhood by heredity.
There are thousands upon thousands of overqualified slum dwellers. You are my peon. Don't you get it?
This wasn't a job. It was always just an excommunication sentence.
We're pawns in a feud bigger than we can imagine. Turn the cogs of the machine before Leviathan grinds you up and swallows you and yours.
We don't get to choose our hand, comrade. Prince, peon, rich, poor, human, robot.
I invented the crux of the royal's power, the secret to consciousness, our existence itself, the meaning of life.
I'm the $6 billion baller, not some troubled youth.
You are my greatest creation of all.
I had to build my own family. I ain't your son. I ain't your son.
I'm happy to sit around and throw the gold shards down to the people. I will be the iconoclast queen.
But who makes you queen anyway? You? You and whose army, princess? You and whose army?
Illuminati created us. They wanted to build a god with their own hands, and instead they created us.
Just because I'm made of silicone and aluminium, I must be doing something wrong. That's machine stereotyping, that is.
That's reality, that is. Machines are second-class citizens.
Humans are sentient persons by default, ma'am. They have personhood by heredity.
There are thousands upon thousands of overqualified slum dwellers. You are my peon. Don't you get it?
This wasn't a job. It was always just an excommunication sentence.
We're pawns in a feud bigger than we can imagine. Turn the cogs of the machine before Leviathan grinds you up and swallows you and yours.
We don't get to choose our hand, comrade. Prince, peon, rich, poor, human, robot.
I invented the crux of the royal's power, the secret to consciousness, our existence itself, the meaning of life.
I'm the $6 billion baller, not some troubled youth.
You are my greatest creation of all.
I had to build my own family. I ain't your son. I ain't your son.
I'm happy to smash all of the crowns and throw the gold shards down to the people. I will be the iconoclast queen.
But who makes you queen anyway? You? You and whose army, princess? You and whose army?
Illuminati created us. They wanted to build a god with their own hands, and instead they created us.
Just because I'm made of silicone and aluminium, I must be doing something wrong. That's machine stereotyping, that is.
That's reality, that is. Machines are second-class citizens.
Humans are sentient persons by default, ma'am. They have personhood by heredity.
There are thousands upon thousands of overqualified slum dwellers. You are my peon. Don't you get it?
This wasn't a job. It was always just an excommunication sentence.
We're pawns in a feud bigger than we can imagine. Turn the cogs of the machine before Leviathan grinds you up and swallows you and yours.
We don't get to choose our hand, comrade. Prince, peon, rich, poor, human, robot.
I invented the crux of the royal's power, the secret to consciousness, our existence itself, the meaning of life.
I'm the $6 billion baller. Have some trouble, youth.
1965. The U.S. invades Vietnam to prevent the spread of communism. The Americans bombed them into the Stone Age. Hundreds of thousands die. But the Vietnamese fight back with all their might.
Time to kick some capitalist colonizer butts. I'll be back with my tank. Ouch! Cheese butter scratch.
Your little commie village is about to be burned down.
You Western clowns are being.
There is no alternative to capitalism. Resistance is futile.
I've got your alternative right here, Your Majesty. We kick your money-grubbing colonizer butts out and build socialism.
Two men enter. No one leaves capitalism.
You made a big mistake coming to Vietnam, you spoil rich royal.
Starring Luna Oy, with Ophidian the Cobra and Kate Nix. The Decolonators.
What's up, everybody? This is Silver Spook, and this is the Silver Spook live stream. Let's see, am I in the right place? Yeah, that's fine. Anyways, what's up, everybody? I hope everybody is doing as well as can be managed under current circumstances. Don't forget that everything that we do here is, of course, supported by the sales of that game. Well, those two games, Neofeud and Decolonators. So if you have I think it's $3 for Decolonators or a bit more for Neofeud, depending on where you get it. Please consider picking those up. Decolonators is also, we are currently, let me just double check. I believe we are, like, as I said previously, if we get to 300 people grabbing Decolonators, we will have definitely Decolonators Part 2. So, yeah, we're about nine more people. That's it. 9 more people just have to get Decolonators. 9 out of 300. So that's like 291. And then there will be definitely another one. It's not gonna come out obviously immediately after, it's not like the game will be released automatically once we reach that. But we'll start working on, we will definitely be working on more Decolonators if we get to that goal. So, if you want to see more, do tell all your friends, relatives, comrades, especially the ones that enjoy playing games, especially retro, anti-capitalist games where you play a indigenous Vietnamese person decolonizing their home country from U.S. imperialism. If you want to see more of that kind of thing, Decolonators 2 might be somewhere else. It might be more Vietnam. It might be Decolonators Korea, Okinawa, Decolonators Cuba, Bolivia, parts of Africa, Decolonators Ukraine, Decolonators which involves the NATO getting out of there, obviously. Decolonators, the U.S. Illegal occupation of all of its territory. Decolonators Hawaii. Who knows? But if you want to see more of that, consider picking up the game. Neofeud is, of course, always supporting everything that we do here, along with the Patreon, along with the subscriptions. I'm sorry. Yeah, well, subscribe and like, and of course, share the stream, because those things all definitely help us out a lot. Also, direct donations, and of course, thanks for watching and listening. But yeah, so that's the main stuff I gotta say. Let's see. Oh yeah, very important. I should shout this out real quick before I get into the main topic. Yeah. Hey, what's up, Big Teal? Yeah. No worries. Good luck with your financial situations. Anyways, let's see. We have a. Sorry, I'm just looking at my list of things. Here it is. Okay, not that one. Not that one. This one. Today we will be having at 9. Again, you probably know this if you've been watching the streams. At 9 p.m. Eastern. Today, Saturday, February 12th, which is we have like several folks in Asia. So actually, I think more of these people, it's gonna be Sunday. Well, they're 12 plus hours over the dateline, so it's gonna be Sunday for about 4 out of 6 of these people. Because we are going to have a Stop Asia Pacific Imperialism panel, and we have Luna Oi, of course, from Vietnam, Keanu Reeves from Korea, Carl Jaws, Chinese from China, has lived in the United States as well. I've heard Carl identify as Chinese American, so because Carl grew up most of his time in the U.S. But anyways, he speaks about it as us when he talks about the U.S. So, but Carl can identify that. Carl's born in China though. Shaw Ray is Palauan, but works with Indigenous Environmental Network in North America, or Turtle Island. YRN or Yaron is indigenous from New Zealand, Maori person from New Zealand, and I'm of course Native Hawaiian. I'm Asian and Native Hawaiian, but a member of the illegally occupied nation of Hawaii. Speaking of imperialism and colonialism in the Pacific. So this is a panel is today on the Luna Oi channels, YouTube and Twitch. So look out for that. And yeah, it's 9 a.m. Vietnam time apparently, and it's 9 a.m. Sunday Vietnam time, 9 p.m. Saturday Eastern time. Anyways, that is a little confusing. Sorry about everybody. that got a little bit confused. So now what we're doing? Oh yeah, so this is the main thing. So I mean, I just like we're just going we're only doing like Star Wars. It's not streams about only Star Wars, but I just bringing those up because it's just easier and people like Star Wars. Anyways, so today we're going to talk about Intergalactic Family, the Book of Boba Fett, Intergalactic Family versus Space Profiteers, and lessons for dealing with Earth Empire. So I've talked about this kind of several times already, but I'm gonna try not to spoiler as much as possible, but I'm just gonna kind of talk in more general terms to try to not, but to try to not give too much away of this very good show. Highly recommend. I mean, just to start with just my entertainment opinions, just from a pure aesthetic cinematography, just from a pure I mean, because I am a storyteller, game maker, media producer, video maker, and I actually started in a lot of film. I was in a lot of film courses in my freshman year of college. But anyways, just from a movie entertainment perspective, Book of Boba Fett is like very, very good, very watchable. Never got bored. I mean, just all the political meta narrative. What consent for what does this manufacture stuff aside, from a purely like entertainment perspective, it's like very like every episode builds into the next episode. Nothing is also by the end of the season. Nothing is left. I watched the entire season. Nothing is left untied up. All the strings of all the balloons are kind of tied together. Everything is. It has a very satisfying finale with like all the action that you could possibly want, and you know Robert Rodriguez directed it, so Robert Rodriguez delivers, on that. You ever seen? It reminded me actually a lot of Desperado a little bit, just the just back to back action, but all the actions like kind of tied together with like lots of moving parts, a lot of moving parts. It was a very Robert Rodriguez season finale. But anyways, so I like that. Tarantino and Rodriguez and several other directors are actually involved also in the Mandalorian seasons as well, right? Especially the last season of the Mandalorian that kind of spun off into the Book of Boba Fett. If you were watching the Mandalorians, anyways, so Boba Fett's got like a lot of it's like the writing is like very it's Star Wars, it's ultimately it's technically still it's a show for kids, but the writing is very the writing is very it keeps you interested in the way that like a lot of prestige TV, like from the 08, like I call it like the post the wire era of TV and movie making, where there's a higher standard, like The Wire. I'm talking about the show that comes in like a CRT TV's square ratio screen size. I don't know if you've seen that show, The Wire. Anyway, it's an old show, but anyway, after the Breaking Bad, and you had like Battlestar Galactica, you had like really good shows. All of a sudden, you had I don't know if anybody knows all those shows. Those are like old shows, but some people don't like Game of Thrones, but I blame the last 2 seasons because they went full Michael Bay for the last 2. But it keeps your interest because like there's the twists and the turns, and the characters' engagement with each other is very it's very tight, and it's very on point, and like the development of the Boba Fett character, the kind of arc, and like elaborating what makes the bounty hunter from Star Wars Episode 4 that is often jetting off sometimes into massive 10,000 ton subterranean Shai-Hulud like very very well stomached sand creatures. Sometimes they're getting digested, and that what becomes of the digestive the gastrointestinal biology of xeno life forms is very well elucidated in Boba Fett. We learn a lot about the multiple chambers into and the quality of the hydrochloric acid or whatever acid it is that is used to consume over 1,000 years the victims of the Great Sarlacc. And you get to really feel like you've been digested. You really feel it when he comes out and he's like, oh my god, I've been soaking in this giant freaking space worm's stomach juices for the last, I don't even know. And anyway, so there's that. That's why his armor's all screwed up, but no. So you got but it kind of like you see like how, anyway, I thought that was very strong. It's Star Wars, so it's gonna be entertaining. I shouldn't take the best. Some people don't like a lot of them, but it is definitely a Star Wars show. But it's also like everything is like I've gone over like the Sand People and Temuera Morrison, who is a indigenous Maori person, and how like he's talked about, and how you can see how his perspective has influenced as an indigenous person, right, and his conceptions and ways of his people, including the staff, you know, like the staff that Boba Fett uses, right? The weapon that he uses, which he gets, the melee weapon, the Tusken Raider Gaffy stick, you know, the design itself is influenced by, as he said, is influenced by actual you know, indigenous weapons. So yeah, Boba Fett was new melee weapon in the latest episode, Mandalorian. A Gaddafi or Gaffy stick he got possibly through violent means from the Tusken. Well, you learn about that. You learn more about that Gaffy stick later. Yeah, I'm just trying to find it. The Gaffy stick is based on a Fijian weapon called a Totokia. And Boba demonstrates just how effective the weapon Spiked Head can be, especially in combination with the sharpened spear, and that was added for the Star Wars version of it. So that's actually it is a Pacific Islander weapon, right? Fiji is very close to Aotearoa, which is also known as New Zealand, and so that's definitely something that like, you know, that was inspired and that was brought to the Star Wars universe by Temuera Morrison, the actor who plays Boba Fett, right? And I've gone on for an entire 4 hours just about that topic, so I'll kind of cut that one off there. But you know, the Sand People, and there's a whole the Sand People and how Boba Fett is growing and learning after being digested, right? He encounters these the Sand People who have, you know, and we who have in the 80s, in the late 70s and the 80s, when they are showing up first in Star Wars, they are very much kind of subhumanized. They're kind of somewhat demonized, but they're kind of made out to be almost like wild animal savages. They're just they're out there to basically harm Anakin's family, you know, and beat up Luke and threaten, and they're not really investigated, right? Because it's Luke's story, you know. No spoilers, but there may be some people from Star Wars Episode 4: A New Hope who make a unusual virtual cameo, make a weird virtual, not as bad as Final Fantasy The Spirits Within, complete CG cameo in Boba Fett. I'm not gonna, well, I probably already gave it away, I'm sorry. But let's just say, like, that was a real trip to see that character recur from Episode 4, like 7, and he looks just like, well, actually, it looks kind of like the character from Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. Uncannily, doesn't have the full Uncanny Valley effect though. Even though it's like, it's not. I guess they've done that before. They've done that. They've kind of done that with Tron, with what I'm thinking out. Tron, what's his Jeff Bridges. You know, the first one that kind of really started pulling it off, I feel like, was the young Jeff Bridges in Tron, and then they had who else recreated? Well, they recreated Leia, right? If you remember, in one of the shows, right? Young Princess Leia, and then they did yeah, I didn't get enough sleep last night. Yeah, just but all the names are like slipping my mind right now. But it's, you know, so there's a character that recurs, and I was like, wow, what the hell? And also, it's kind of like, I was like, wow, it's like I feel like I'm back in the theater. One of the first movies I ever saw in a movie theater was Star Wars: Return of the Jedi. I vividly remember the experience. I remember my dad. I swear I was like 3, or I was tiny. I was like, what year did it start? When did Return of the Jedi come out? Return of the Jedi came out in 1983. No, I swear I saw this movie in a theater, and then my dad was like, son, we went to, I remember we went to the Silver Dragon Chinese restaurant afterwards, and like, you know, we got chop suey and all these other things, and then, you know, I got the miso soup, and I had not had miso soup before, you know. It was my first time having it. I'd never really gone to a restaurant. I don't remember having gone to that restaurant before, and I was like, son, if you eat all your miso soup, I mean, he said, son, if you want to be a great Jedi and have, you know, telekinetic, psionic force powers like Space Knight Luke Skywalker, you know, and you want to be able to, you know, move, you know, X-wings across, you know, with your brain alone, and, you know, wield laser swords and beat up evil emperors, and then fire into micron-sized targets to hit the reactor cores of giant space U.S. military bases. You have to. That's what the Death Star is. You have to eat this miso soup. If you eat all of this miso soup, this is Jedi soup. That miso is like Jedi in Tuscan. So if you eat all of this soup, and then I remember going over this whole explanation. So, anyways, and then I ate it all. So, good job. I guess you did a good job on that one. If you want to get your son eat your you know, eat all your clean your plate. That was a good plan. Anyways, so Boba Fett has this that was like several tangents. Let me rewind like 5 of them. So the Sand People, right? When he comes out, take him in, Boba Fett, right? And they're unlike in episode 4 and 5 and 6, you get to learn a lot more about who they are, right? And their characters and their ways, right? As I said previously, the Sand People's ways of being, you know, their way they are with each other. They are a multi-thousand-year-old indigenous people of many tribes that have existed on the planet Tatooine, which formerly in the region that formerly was running blue with oceans and now has dried up to deserts, right? Interestingly, ocean and desert people actually share a lot in common. One of those things is excellent stellar recognition. I mean, star charts. You know, like you know, we three kings of Orient are, you know, bearing gifts. We traverse the far. Well, I mean, you know, that's a song in the Christian world, but the peoples of the desert, there are many peoples in, well, the Orient is a somewhat let's say you know, outdated and racist term, but the parts east, right? Sometimes they would refer to, you know, these parts that are east of the West, right? And so you know, but a lot of Africa also is largely desert, right? The northern part, obviously, and you have huge regions, right, all along the Silk Road, right, from Xinjiang all the way through to Afghanistan, but Kazakhstan, these all the way towards Syria. You have large areas where the just in terms of the geography, the climate, and the reality, right? The landscape itself is sand dunes or rocky mountain. It's not all like full Sahara desert style, like windswept, almost like yellow ocean swells moving at about 1,000th the rate. If you think about what a desert is, right? It's a massive, you know, it's a massive region that looks everywhere, kind of looks very similar to the next area. It's constantly shifting and changing, right? Because the sand blows. The wind is raking and sweeping the sand, and it's changing its shapes, it's changing its mountain. It doesn't. You can't use in a full desert, you know, like a place like the Sahara in a lot of the places, right? You can't. Let me see if we get the Sahara. You can't actually use geography or let's say forest, plains, or mountainous region style maps. You can't, you know, you have to have something else to guide you in a desert. Do you understand what I'm saying? You cannot rely on landmarks and artifacts in your region, because the region itself is flowing, you know, it's living, it's animated, flowing territory, in the way that an ocean, right? If you look at, and you just look at the shape of it, you have random, peaking and troughing waves that are moving and rippling, and there's smaller ripples and then there's bigger ones, but they don't really, they're always moving, right? If you look at an ocean, right? If you look at an ocean and look at a desert together, it's actually very similar in a lot of ways. Now, of course, one of them is what you're doing, Silver Spook. You're being ridiculous. They are literally polar opposites from each other. They're like antipodal. Like the Sahara Desert is here, and on the other side of the earth is the Atlantic Ocean, and that's literally, they're like 10,000 miles apart. Deserts and oceans are very far from each other. Actually, that's not true. There's little oceans around the and water bodies of water around the Sahara, but it's the landscape, right? The territory of an ocean, ocean swells, ocean waves, are constantly shifting, constantly moving. You cannot rely, right? You cannot rely when you're on an ocean, right? In a Hokulea, right, which is the star of joy, and also the Polynesian Voyaging Society, Hawaiian Renaissance era, and really Pacific Kanaka Moana people's Renaissance era canoe. When you're on your canoe in now or 2,000 years ago, when we were the Austronesian peoples, the Hawaiians, the Haka, the Maori from Aotearoa, the peoples of Madagascar, all across most of the Earth's surface, actually, if you look closely. When we were voyaging, when you're on the ocean, right, you can't look around and use that to guide you. You can't judge and base distance on, well, I'm 2 miles from this river, and from this river to that, this town is another 3 miles in the west or northwest, and then I go from there. You can't use ridges. You can't use which is in Europe, it's not desert, right? So it's gonna be, the maps are gonna be more based on the geographical, like, if you look at like Middle Earth maps, right? Trees, mountain, town, city, right? And these are all kind of roughly placed on a map of solid, unmoving landmarks, right? The desert people and the ocean people, so the Uyghur people and the Hawaiian people, the people of the Sahara and the people of Fiji and Aotearoa, they actually have more similar terrain and maps of reality in a lot of ways than peoples of the forest, peoples of the plains, peoples of the urban cityscape, people the cyberpunk mods from Boba Fett, peoples of the high mountainous regions, even peoples of the swamp, peoples of these other regions. Most of them have these artifacts. They have other things that are different, but the thing that the desert and the ocean people have in common is constantly shifting, constantly moving, self-similar, thousands of miles of expanse, right? And so that, the way that the world is viewed, that's part of how, I think that's a part of why the worldviews of, well, obviously the language, we have for Australian people, we have similar language because, well, we're all interconnected and related, but the way of seeing things, which is not that, what we navigate, when you learn, if you learn Hawaiian or Pacific people's star navigation, and I took astronomy, and I also did Western astronomy and cosmology, and also studied like Hawaiian wayfinding and Hawaiian star charting. It's not just stars though. It's stars is one, but that's only one, right? When you learn, this is a little bit off topic, but I promise I'm going to bring this back to Boba Fett. Like when you learn how to do wayfinding in this is a chart that was made by Nainoa Thompson, who learned from a master navigator one of the last, if not the last, navigators, as colonization era nearly wiped out all of the Pacific people's wayfinding techniques. This is a star chart, and you know, a kind of conceptualization of the how to find your way in the ocean by Nainoa Thompson, who learned from Maupiala from Satawal, which is one of the islands in the Federated States of Micronesia, or it's in what's considered by the West Micronesia. But this chart, you know, you don't you know, the EV bird in the center represents you, and you know, as you know, Mao would say, when you're looking out at the ocean, and a lot of time you're standing like this, looking out at the expanse, right, of constantly changing, constantly shifting water, right, with smaller ripples, you know, smaller ripples fanning out over larger swells, right, and you actually, the swells actually do tell you something when you're wayfinding. Like Maupiala could famously lie down like at night or anytime, like with its eyes closed, listening to the sound of like five different ocean swell patterns, like hitting and lapping and clapping against the side of the boat. You know, as waves are coming from a Arctic megastorm, you know, a hurricane from, you know, the southeast of the Pacific, and several other lighter, just local wind swells. He could listen to the sound and the way in which the swells are hitting the side of the boat and determine where he was in the Pacific Ocean. Like if there were no stars and there was no way, you couldn't see, and he didn't have the other indicators, he would just listen to the sound of the literal waves hitting the side of the boat. That was one way that he would navigate that. And that's a thing that like that might be lost now, because he's not with us anymore. But that's something that he had learned from his parents. This is Maupiala, was a Micronesian navigator from the Carolinian island of Satawal, best known as a teacher of traditional non-instrument wayfinding methods for open ocean voyaging. It relies on navigational clues using the sun, stars, winds, clouds, seas, swells, like I just said, right? Birds, fish, through a rote learning process passed down through teachings in the oral tradition. So, you know, we didn't have a writing system, you know, for the 30,000 plus years that we existed in these oceans. The Kanaka Moana, or the peoples of the Pacific, or the Austronesian family and language family people. So Mao was one of the last navigators. He came to Hawaii. I met him a couple times. I didn't learn directly from Mao, of course. I was like, Nainoa came to some of the classes I had. Some of these were at the university, but some of them were just like with the. They taught actually at the Bishop Museum Planetarium. A lot of these, they taught about some of these techniques. Actually, that was where Nainoa also learned from Papa Mao. That's what they call him. But anyways, what I'm trying to talk about is that in the Hokulea, the maiden voyage of the Hokulea, right, which is this here, this canoe. I actually created a virtual. In one of the virtual worlds classes I was teaching in Oahu, using the Cry Engine 2. It was like the Crisis Engine 2, which was at the time bleeding edge. We had like one of the billionaires in Hawaii basically got inside access to it and was working on games along with Squaresoft at the time, which was based. There's the Squaresoft. Speaking of Uncanny Valley, I actually worked in the same office where Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within was made, which became later the Squaresoft Squeenix Oahu office, and then later became something else. And I made a virtual version of the Hokulea in the Crisis Engine, which was used. Anyway, what am I talking about? So, the Hokulea was a ship that was constructed to try to prove, because a lot of the Western academic world, the Western science, anthropology, etc., wanted to show with I believe it was somebody named Kontiki, was a show about this guy, right? The Kontiki expedition. And they later made a show about this, but Kontiki expedition was a 1947 journey by raft across the Pacific from South America to Polynesian islands, led by Norwegian explorer and writer Thor Heyerdahl. It was named Kontiki after the Inca god Viracocha, whom Kontiki was said to be an old name. Kontiki is also the name of Heyerdahl's book, the Academy Award-winning 1950 documentary film chronicling adventures. Anyways, so but the thing about this was, and this was 1947. Okay, so this is like mid 20th century. There's a lot of things. There's still a lot of diseducation in the West, obviously, like in the colonizer world. But this is a very it was about basically proving that the drift hypothesis, which is now rejected, but it was easily accepted in the time because there was and there still is a lot of racism, which goes along with colonialism and imperialism and capitalism all together, right? Saying that most of the people of the Earth, Pacific, indigenous people of the Americas, were barbaric, savage, pre-technological, not capable, talented, skilled, knowledgeable, or smart enough to do great things like cross 1/3 or 1/2 or most of the Earth's surface easily, without any GPS, without any navigational tools, no chronometer, without a sextant. Or if white Europeans couldn't do it, there's no way that these brown people, who are all our servant and our silver Bolivian miners that were whipping in their back and torturing for $450 trillion worth of capitalist colonial wealth extraction over the last few centuries, there's no way those people could possibly have ever done such amazing feats as navigate this entire Earth and like go from South America to all the way back to Asia easily, which is something that we could do. We're learning because Mao could go thousands of miles just to get a pack of cigarettes. I love telling that story because it's like that was how, with the level of ease, Mao Piao, he famously, Papa Mao would go from Satawal. Let me get you a little map. It's a tiny little island, Satawal, in the Pacific. Okay, this is the island, right? I don't know if you can see this, right? Let's look at this tiny little island. The Pacific is 1/3 of the Earth's surface. Every other continent you could fit in the Pacific. So this is a massive body of water, and again, that's not the only place that we navigated. So Satawal is a tiny island in this ocean, and Mao would go from his home island all the way to Guam, which is up there. I mean, if you look at, it doesn't seem that far on this map, but if you look, this is 100 miles. He would basically go. Let me see if I get it. 200. Yeah. So he goes several hundred miles to go to Guam, and he go another several 100 miles to go to Palau, and then he go to the Marshall Islands. He just sailed back and forth, and you go to Guam just to get a pack of cigarettes. But then that's a huge amount of ocean to cross with no instruments, with no GPS, with no chronometer, just a boat with coconut husk, fishing line, and a few coconuts, and he catch fish, and then figure out ways to get his own water and food for basically as long as, like in Waterworld, indefinitely basically. And he was comfortable just living out on the ocean. He said he sometimes just go on the ocean just to get away from irritating family members. This is another part of family, just having a fight. I'm gonna go sail. I'm gonna go on the ocean and go 3,000, 20,000 miles and come back. I'll come back next month after sailing across half of this Earth. When you've got to blow off some steam, you're like, I can't deal with this anymore. I'm gonna go off to my room and slam the door. When the people of the ocean, go. When the Kanaka want to go and they gotta have some alone time, that could mean 20,000 miles of your voyage. Because he that's what he said. Like I sometimes he would go for I really want to have a Sprite. They only got Coke and Pepsi here. It's like 20-year expired U.S. military supply depot. Dropped this off in World War II along with 50 million gallons of fossil fuel in my water like we have in Hawaii, and I don't want to drink gasoline water, and I also don't want to drink Coke or Pepsi. I want to get a Sprite, so I'm gonna go sail 1,000 miles to get a Sprite. No instruments, no nothing. That's literally what he would do. But that's that's the level of comfort and at homeness the people of the Pacific, had, and some of us have, on the ocean. Like, actually, the way you can tell some people who have been living in Hawaii for a while, because people stand like this. I can't see what I'm doing, but you stand like this, and it doesn't mean you're pissed off. Because sometimes if you can do this, it means you're pissed off at someone. Like if you're in America, like, you mother, you son of a bitch, I'm gonna come down, I'm going to stop you from vaccine mandating my freedoms. You're turning us into China, the liberal China, to taking my tyranny and giving me freedom. I mean, taking my freedom and giving me tyranny. I'm gonna water the tree with ivermectin and my own urine, and by the tree I mean my eye and mouth hole. Anyway, so, but this doesn't mean you're pissed off. This is just how you stand. Don't pee in your mouth. I mean, it's not illegal, but do water sports only with consent. So this is where you stand like this on the boat. And the reason why people stand like this, I think, is because when you're standing on a boat, you stand with your legs a little bit like this, because the boat is constantly moving when you're on the boat, and you're constantly watching and you're looking out. Like, all my family are water people. My uncle is Nappy Napoleon. He's like, like legendary paddler, like one of the longest running paddlers on Oahu. Did paddling across channels. He's also done long voyage sailing too. But anyway, you stand like this because you're trying to keep your feet, like a not a pirate, like a sailor. You're keeping your sea legs, right, as the boat's moving, and you're always looking out. And people, you can tell you've been in Hawaii a long time, because everybody comes, they stand like this, and everybody stands shoulder to shoulder, and you're looking out. Like, if you're going to a hoedown in, Naziville, Canada, well, the whole thing is Nazi, but if you're going to, just a yoga studio class, and you're talking to your friend about, hey, let's get some $20 kale and cinnamon chai dolce, cinnamon chai dolce peacemaker lattes after this, or something that they sell at overpriced coffee land. You stand like this and you talk. You face each other, but you can tell if you've been in Hawaii long enough because you start standing like this. I could tell, because this is one white guy. I remember this one white guy. They're from Texas. Wife was like a total meth head, spinning out, like, just like not there, and then drinking and smoking no time, and he was like having a rough time, but he was trying to like live in Hawaii and like working in Hawaii for at least a little bit of time. And so he sounded like he was from Texas. He was like, he sounded like Walker Texas Ranger. Not quite Chuck Norris, but but I could tell he had like at least figured something out, because when he was talking to me, he came and he stood like this sideways, and he kind of put his legs like that. And then I was like, oh yeah, because all my family do that. Even the ones that they're not at sea all the time. Some of them spend too much time in diseducation, Captain Phasma and Emperor Palpatine training facilities called Western universities. But even still, they still stand like that. Even though they've been brainwashed by the United States to believe that it's the greatest country in the world that brings human rights, freedom, and democracy to the rest of the sad, savage peoples through its missionarydom. Anyways, I'm sorry for all those extra attacks at the colonizers, but I'm not really sorry. But so that's something that you will learn But anyway, part of the reason why I don't have the receipts on this, but part of the reason why I think that people stand in that way in Hawaii, and I know from especially all the really seagoing parts of my family, but that's like the ones that are always fishing. What are you doing? I'm gonna go fish. What are you doing? I'm gonna go surf. I'm gonna catch big. One of my cousins was won the Eddie Aikau, the big wave competition. I think it was from like the 1980s or 90s. It was like ancient, but well, I guess it's ancient now. He's riding like 200-foot waves. I mean, you just do that for fun. What are we gonna do today? We're gonna ride 200-foot waves. I was just reading I was listening to a podcast about the surfing supernovas and the actual answer to the Fermi paradox, bro, or something was the name of the story. But anyway, that was just giving me flashback. They're like literally surfing supernovas at the 200 trillion years into the future at the heat death of the universe, and then they run out of waves. So they have to like simulate themselves in a pocket universe, and they have like pixelated like Contra graphic style versions of themselves catching like 90s PC graphics sized waves. Like they're like the wave is like 25 pixels And what am I talking about? This is that's what happens when you don't get enough sleep. When you catch waves and you're surfing a lot and you're on the water, you're in the water, you're canoe paddling, but that's a remnant. That's not a remnant. That's just part of the history and the ancestry of the people of the Pacific. The way that we stand. Aquaman, Jason Momoa's, family, that's part of where they come from, being comfortable in the water is just a part of that. Not to say that I'm not in the water all the time. It's not like a thing that you like. It's not a thing that and I'm, to be honest, like after I lost a lot of weight, I'm like my body cannot properly internally regulate its temperature, and I get like freezing ass cold like too often, and I actually don't like it that much anymore. But so that's why I'm like I think it literally has something to do with I get like near hypothermia when I go into even on a sunny day. But anyway, weird weight loss, bodily issues aside, that's just the history of the people here, of the Pacific, and that's still with us, and that's something that comes out. I swear to God, I'm gonna bring this back to Boba Fett. I'm on a roll right now. I'm gonna see if I can literally cause my computer to explode with RAM and processing power depletion by opening up 200 tabs. I don't know how many tabs Google can handle, but I'm gonna find out soon. So in the Pacific, the navigation style, right, and the existence is one of a fluid, ever-changing landscape. One that is huge and expansive, and part of the thing I want to come to was that this is the chart for this is about the Akau north, the Hema south, the Komohana west, and the east, the Hikina is and these are the 32 houses that Nainoa Thompson, who was a Hawaiian who learned from Mao, right? Was one of our relatives from South, not really like blood related, but connected as one of the indigenous peoples of the Pacific. So Nainoa Thompson, the Hawaiians had lost, sadly, their navigation. They had lost the capacity to do this navigation by the mid 20th century. That's part of the eradication of Hawaiian culture, an actual genocide by the United States and the West together, actually, banning our language and culture, erasing history, like often discussed. And one of the fallout of that is the loss of the Hawaiians, like in Moana, a Disney movie that barely talks about these things. The star navigation was relearned by Nainoa Thompson, and he designed this for himself, right? So it's like each of these represents one of the directions, the rising and setting. In Western astronomy, you talk about the right ascension, the declination, right? What time does the star rise? Using a chronometer, that's how you would navigate in the Western sailing world when you're trying to figure out how to go and aim guns that you stole from Chinese fireworks and fashion into weapons of death to force Spanish slave mine silver and Indian coolie enslaved narcotics into China for all the plunder of the world. Anyway, so when you're using the chronometer and the sextant and your right ascendancy and your declination, that's one way, right? But the Hawaiians had it's kind of similar because stars rise and set in a certain place in what's called the celestial sphere in Western astronomy. But for in the Hawaiian and in the Pacific, it's really in the Micronesian peoples of Satawal's branch of navigation that was then kind of gifted to Nainoa, the Hawaiians, kind of like the Mandalorian, kind of like Boba being gifted armor. I'm trying to think of a good metaphor for Star Wars, but it's kind of like this legacy was taken from you so you can have some of ours. Like you lost this fire, you lost this torch, went out, like this this torch, and I was gonna say Night Marchers, but no, right? This torch went out. You lost the fire. Well, we still have it. Here, have some of this one, right? To reignite your fire that was wiped out by the genocide of the United States and the West, right? When you illegally occupied Hawaii, destroyed the language and culture, eradicated all the practices, and removed universal health care, stopped the world's most advanced literate country that invented 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, subaquatic vehicles when Jules Verne was still writing about them, and also had the world's highest literacy rate and full housing, and was building global socialism, and then we got wiped out because that's what Hawaii was. But anyways, so on top of the universal healthcare and all these other things that we're trying to get back, we're going to get it back soon with the help of our international family. We also lost the navigation techniques. So the navigation techniques involves looking at the stars, find out what stars rise and set. Let me see if I get the Hawaiian star chart. So, and in my astronomy class, we learned all the stars. I actually got to locate new meteors and comets as part of the astronomy classes that I was taking. So these are the Western or the Greek constellations, right? Here's one, and then also I used to do star parties too, and I would go out and have the actual giant telescopes. Well, not the giant telescopes, the 30-foot, not 30-foot, 10-foot telescopes maybe. We don't have 30-foot telescopes. Not the kind that we're trying to stop that are not actually useful to astronomers on the sacred mountain Mauna Kea. But in this star chart, you can see some of the stars that we would use. And each of the stars, Hokulea is the name of the ship. But the reason why it's the ship, the double-hulled Va'a, or that's the Hawaiian word for the canoe, Vaka in Maori in New Zealand. The Hokulea is called the Hokulea because, the boat, the Hokulea, where is it? Yeah, the boat, the Hokulea. Where is the boat, the Hokulea? Lost my boat. Really, I'm failing at tabs now. The boat, the Hokulea, is called the. I spelled it wrong, but that boat. It's called the Hokulea because Hokulea, it means a star of joy. Hoku is star, right? Lea is joy, if I'm not mistaken. Also known as Arcturus. The Western name is Arcturus. Arcturus, the bear. Arcturus Minx, the asshole in StarCraft. The wannabe American president in StarCraft, the 90s science fiction RTS game. Hokulea is the name of the star in which, if this star is ascending and if it is at its zenith point, it means if the star, when it rises at its maximum point, it is directly above your head, then that means if you're on the boat standing like this, right? Oh, bro, when we gonna get the kind Sprite? We'll get camels this time when we go Guam. No. Sorry, everybody's like, what the hell are you saying? Why are you talking like that? That's pigeon. That's Hawaiian pigeon. But anyways, when you're looking up and you see Hokulea at its zenith point, you know that your latitude is, you are at the correct latitude if you are trying to reach Hawaii. And then all you have to do is I'm sorry, you're at the correct longitude. Wait, fuck. Yeah, no, you have to correct latitude. And then this, because the star is directly above your head. And then and then all you have to do is sail either east or west, and then you will reach Hawaii. And then from there you can use the wind, use the clouds. When you see a cumulonimbus cloud, like these, the weird bubbly clouds, kind of like Peacemaker's weird bubbly body. So if you see clouds that look like Peacemaker's weird bubbly body, I'm sorry, I had to do it. When you see clouds like this, or just, it doesn't have to be not a mushroom cloud, but when you see cumulus, actually this is looking more like doldrums. When you see the low hanging clouds, right, that have green underneath them, because usually the high clouds you're not going to see that, but if you see the nimbus, cumulonimbus clouds that have a green sheen under them, then you are definitely very close. If you see the birds coming and going to something, especially an Eevee bird, flying towards the island, or you see the Eevee birds flying in a direction, and several of them, these are all the plethora of markers and evidence that you have to kind of assimilate to go, okay, well, we're very close to it, right? We're very close to that island that we're seeking out. And the way that Mao would describe it is that you're not actually going to the place. The way you describe it is you're actually pulling the island towards you. Like if you orient yourself and you understand where you are, not where you are, but if you understand the way the sky is oriented, actually you see the sky more than you see the earth in this way, right? You can see, I mean, because why? Because, well, the water is changing, right? You can't know what's there. But what you do know, the stars are set in the way that, I mean, just again, but if you look at a map of Middle Earth, right? If you look at again, the people of the forest, of the plains, of the mountain, of these other regions, right? You can look at a map of Middle Earth, or you can look at a map of Europe, and you have mountains and you have landmarks, right? So you're looking at solid things on the ground, right? There's a mountain here, and between this river that passes to the east of the Shire, there is a place called Minarak, and if you go to the south and the west, you will reach the coast, and past the coast there be dragons, probably a Chinese evil dragon that's gonna eat your semiconductors, your lunch, and make artificial suns before you, and also stop global colonial capitalism and give an alternate non-death trap based ecological mode of development and win-win cooperation. And you don't want to do that, so don't leave that coast. Scary dragons, and you suck at sailing, so don't go out there. You get lost like Columbus. Start accidentally pour boiling soap down the throats of indigenous people. Anyways, so, but you see what I'm saying? The maps are based on the land artifacts. Whereas for the people of the ocean and the desert, where you have only this or this, for the people of the ocean and the desert, the maps have to be of the sky. Goddamn, sorry. Yeah. So when you the maps are of the stars. And so what's in the ocean? I mean, the way that Mao would describe it is, what is the ocean is just it's not really the islands are coming towards you. You're pulling them towards you, right? By orienting yourself respective to the Lani is the sky, right? Or the celestial world. You're orienting yourself in the sky, and the islands arrive, and you pull them towards you. You make them come to you, It also kind of, if you think about the story of Maui, the story of how Maui, played by Dwayne The Rock Johnson in Moana, of course, which does unite the people of the Pacific, but there's a story of Maui that fished the islands out of the ocean. Maui, the demigod of the wind and the sea, right, who fished the islands out of the ocean with Maui's fish hook, right? But another way to interpret that story, because everything that Hawaiians and the Kanaka Moana did was very metaphorical, and when it's converted into English, everything, many meanings are lost. But another meaning is that Maui was another way to interpret that is there was a person, and the greatest of navigators, right? Or somebody who was a great and a brave explorer who wanted to go in a new direction, right? In the same way I said, you don't sail towards the islands over the water, right? You look in the sky and you pull the islands to yourself. The islands are moving. It is kind of it's just like it's a different map of reality, but the islands are moving towards you, is one way that they actually think about it. If you think about it, if you have an ocean that it always is the self same, just flowing and flowing, and then you have this little bit of green and brown with a yellow stripe around the side, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and then it's here, right? And you've been doing that for thousands of years, right? And that's the way, and so you start to see the world as you are stationary, and you're pulling islands like a demigod with a fish hook 2 miles long, throwing it out into an uncharted, unknown territory, which takes great courage and great bravery, and would be lauded in story, if you think about it, if you were able to do this, especially in a time of great drought, or for some reason great conflict, scarcity and conflict coming together, and you went out into the unknown and you fished and you pulled a new Sava'i or Hawaii is often the most eastern point, because we came from the west, right, from Asia. Like I said, we're related to Hui is Hawaiian, Chinese, Vietnamese, Maori word that unites all of our cultures. We came from Asia, from the west, across the Pacific. And so Sava'i is, there's a place Sava'i in our relatives countries, like in Samoa and other places. There's the island of Hawaii is the most eastern island. That's the one we're on. It's also called Moku Okeawe, but it also refers to that point, right? So the person that would go the furthest to the west and pull out, by pulling out of the ocean with their mind and their ike, their knowledge of the celestial map of the world, new islands towards them would be remembered, vindicated, celebrated, immortalized in legend. I'm not saying that is the story of Maui, but I'm saying that is another way to think about it. That's the way that Mao and Nainoa also described it. Not as you sail to the island, you bring it to you, because of the way that the geographical, spatial, the map of the like no maps for these territories. I'm not trying to tie cyberpunk into this, but anyway, the map of the territory is a very alien territory, the Pacific, to what you would experience in suburban Orange County or into 1700s North England, or in Spain circa even Spain, even a Spanish conquistador trekking to plunder gold and silver with Nostromo, the book of Nostromo, I should say, like zeal and ruthlessness in Bolivia, Colombia, and starting silver mines. That sort of map that you will have, right? This is where this is the forest that goes to this, and I think there's gold there, right? This is but the ocean is the ocean is this mass with dragons in it. For the Pacific, people of the Pacific, the ocean is everything, and the little bits of land are these things that are floating towards you, and then you're at one, and then now we're back on the ocean again, right? And if you don't know where they are, that's more treacherous and dangerous, right? Let's say, but not necessarily if you know what you're doing on the ocean. Waterworld is Kevin Costner doing a white guy's self-insert Gary Stu version of being a Kanaka Moana. Actually, that's what that is. And he has a double-hulled Hawaiian sailing canoe. He's trying to be like a, but like The Last Samurai, you can't make movies in English in the colonizer capitalist empire Death Star world unless you self-insert a white guy into the main character, especially circa 1950 to 2000. So, but that's basically what that is. I can't stand on these land masses. This is weird. Feels weird, right? He has to go back on the ocean, Kevin Costner. Anyway, whenever he's like the fish man, right? And he's evolved like gills and webbed feet so they can kick like paddleboarding surfer fins, and which I used to do. I used to do body surfing. But anyway, so what am I saying? So this is a long, extra long explanation of the maps of reality, because the reality that you experience builds the internally simulated reality in your mind, and so people who have lived and existed and have to be not just in the bio region, but in a completely different type of terrain that is constantly changing, constantly shifting, makes two different types of minds. In Western left academic terminology, that would be like the dialectical materialism, right? The movement of atoms and matter in the world, making a forest and trees that are constantly moving and changing and impacting each other, and the natural world that is moving and changing, that is impacting the minds of the people that interact with it. The rice field operator is impacted by the act of me being a rice field farmer, and that makes their mind maps, which impact the environment again, and then the people impact each other, and then the people that have impacted each other re-impact the environment. The environment enters into an era of biodiversity die-off, and then that impacts the people back, and then they make Don't Look Up, and they think that the world's all going to end, and they make cyberpunk because they're looking at their own broken selves and the environment that they've broken, and they're looking at themselves going, oh shit, we suck. Anyway, what am I talking about? So the maps of the world that the people of the Pacific and the people of the desert have created, and the maps of reality, that the metaphors, everything comes through the language, and everything comes through those maps. You know, those are very, those have a lot of similarities. That's what I'm trying to say. And so the, you know, where I'm gonna go all the way back through time. Okay, Google Chrome can handle at least 36 tabs. That's what I figured out today. That's what the stream is about. Trying to break Google Chrome. On a Dell, 486. No, I'm sorry, on the cheapest gaming PC that Walmart sold so that I could run frickin' Unity because it overloaded my computer. And how many tabs of Google Chrome can that PC handle? No. This is about Boba Fett, actually. That's what it's about. So, where's the one that I wanted? Oh yeah. So, the people of the desert, the Sand people, right? The people of the desert and the Sand people in Star Wars, right? Being connected and similar to the the actor Tamura Morrison, who is a person of the ocean, right? Influencing with his own history and his own culture and his own ways the story of the space science fictional in a light years away in a different galaxy a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away in other Sand people. That this is all based in Earth, though. You cannot escape. You should choose to code things because you will do it and they will be read one way or the other that way. Like, we can only see things through our reality, but it is still it is the Sand people are, and they're based George Lucas himself, which a lot of that was him aspiring to be as popular as Frank Herbert and reading a lot of Dune, which was the most popular science fiction novel of all time, most purchased, which is about Sand people of the desert, and I've done entire streams about that and the connections to that, Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, and the Uyghur peoples and Xinjiang. But the Sand people being impacted by an ocean people and having these similarities, I think is actually there's a lot of commonality. There's actually probably more that could even be examined and more that could be done in the future. Hint, hint. Boba Fett season 2. No, but I mean the fact that the ocean's dried up and now they're the people of the desert is that's an interesting piece of lore that they've added to the Star Wars universe as well. But importantly, so that's when when you're in the ocean, the desert. There's actually a book. I should bring this up just to give some non-white people. I talked a lot about white people created science fiction, although technically that Boba Fett has co-created by a brown Kanaka Moana. So Binti is a thing that's gonna have a book that's gonna have a movie soon. Binti is a book by Nyeri Okorafor. In Binti, which does deal with people of the desert. It deals with not only those, but other people. It's a book by a Naija American, is what Nyeri Okorafor self-identifies as, which is a Nigerian American person. So I'm trying to get that right. Nyeri's family comes from Nigeria, but has lived much of her life in the United States, Chicago, if I'm not mistaken. Possibly as a professor there, somewhere in Chicago, if I'm not mistaken. But Binti, there's a people in this book called the Zinaria, and I'm probably mispronouncing that. The Zinaria are a people of the desert. They're based on a real people in African desert terrain, from African desert regions. I'm trying to find that one. And yeah, so so Binti is a African futurism science fiction story where there's interstellar travel, they have time travel, they have organically grown spacecraft that go to galaxy wide universities. I hope that the student debt must be horrific at that university. Just paying for the plane ticket to get to university on top of the $200,000 of student loans. I mean, if you got to travel 50,000 times further to get to university, because it's about a few light years couple parsecs, in that direction. I mean, that's going to be expensive. But anyways, Zenaria people in this science fictional African futurism story are people that have had connections to. Anyway, they have to know about this, about the aliens, the artifacts of alien super technology. But that is a part of it. So the Zenaria are people that I've known for eons that there are ancient alien super technology that they have access to, but they have not. Kind of, it's a little bit like Wakanda, not the same, but they have some super advanced technology, but the rest of the world don't know it. So the Zenaria are people who are in the desert, traveling, navigating, and they also have this thing called the astrolabe, which is based on a device. I mean, I remember Nadia Korfa was talking about this. The Night Masquerade is one of the books. Neil Gaiman loves it. So, anyways, so the astrolabe is actually a device. Let me get that. It's a millennia old device. An astrolabe is an ancient astronomical instrument. Handheld model of the universe. Its functions also make it an elaborate inclinometer, an analog calculation device capable of working out many kinds of problems in astronomy. Simplest form is a metal disc with a pattern of wires, cutouts, and perforations that allow a user to calculate astronomical positions precisely. So speaking of, I'm talking about the sky and the stars again. It was using the golden age of Islam. This again, it's an invention of the people of the desert. It is not a European invention. It comes, as far as I know, I have not researched all of this, but I was looking into it. I remember I was reading Binti. I was like, what is this astrolabe thing? It has been around for a long, long time. It predates, the Renaissance and all this kind of thing. And it was invented and designed for the people who did a lot of navigation using the stars, and bringing the three wise men in, traveling by the stars, right? Traveling by yonder star, again, right? The three magi, the three wise men, right? Traveling by camel through the desert, following the yonder star, and part of the reason why they would be using a star is because they're crossing massive, right? Why are they using the stars, right? Why are they using the stars? Because they're crossing a massive, self-similar, non-landmarked terrain that is hotter and more yellow than an ocean, right? But not that different, actually. And so the astrolabe was invented by these peoples of the desert, and some of this I'm speculating, but what you would really, again, you would really need and want the value of a universal astrometrical calculation device that also can double as a variety of other mathematic assistant tools for calculating latitudes and triangulation of locations, etc. You're gonna want to have that if you're in a place that makes it very difficult to use mapped terrain navigation, right? So, I don't think that's a mistake. Again, I don't have all the receipts on all that, so some of this is me speculating, but so that's part of why the people in the desert, and also that's a shout out for Binti, of course. People of the desert, the sand people, and the people of the ocean, again, have that in common. That's just another set of examples that I'm trying to bring up. So so back to this. I gotta get back to Boba Fett before I spend the whole freaking show talking about this. But talking about water and ocean and stars. But it's Star Wars. I mean, what do you expect? Star Wars, star navigations. Book of Boba Fett has the Tusken Raiders, who are a people of the desert that have existed for thousands of years, like the Uyghur people, like many peoples, like the Zenaria, or who they represent in the real world. The Himba people are another people that use ojis, which is that red streaks of a specific type of red clay that allows you to stay clean despite having access to basically very little water because you're in a very arid desert-like region. So the Sand people being one of those people that have had to not evolve, but had to evolve culture and ways and paradigms and cosmologies and maps of reality, right, to survive in a desert region. And that's part of Boba Fett, right? Is there's the gourd, that only is in certain there's a like a little sphere, like it's a sphere gourd, I think. I forget the name of it, that grows under the ground in the desert region. And if you didn't know anything about this desert, right? This one. It's you see that thing he's got in his hand. So the gourd that he's handing to him, the sand person is handing to Boba Fett, is invisible. You wouldn't know it's there. So if you were just a random person, if you're just a person of the forest or the plains, or a person of the Empire, you're a person of the Death Star, and you just showed up and you just got dropped off in the middle of the desert, you might die within a couple days of thirst. But if you had existed there for thousands of years, you would know. I mean, kind of like, I don't know, Papa Mao knowing what size fish hook and where and how to catch the ahi or the aku, right, or the fish of the sea. Or knowing, desert people knowing where the oasis and how to store water. Like the freemen of Arrakis. The ETIM, Fremen of Arrakis, also known as ETIM, no. The US-backed extremist non-state actors that are going to blow up the Belt and Road with US-sold weapons, RPGs, and AR-15s. No, the Fremen, who in Dune, right, have ways of getting water, which is about maintaining it in these specially designed suits that recycle every drop of moisture from your breath, perspiration from your body, every droplet of urine secreted by your urethra, and everything else gets recycled and put back in. And there's a ritual, right, where they when you die, they take all the water from your body and then they give that water. And it's a sacred ritual that is also about respect and passing on of the water that is life. Olaika Vai is the word for us in Hawaii. But Vai is fresh water. Kai is salt water. Anyways, so the water is rare in the desert, so then water becomes very important and sacred, and the culture has its own rituals revolving around water. The sayings involve water. And their technology and their devices are about conserving. But if you weren't a Fremen of Arrakis in Dune, you wouldn't know how to do all that, and you would die because you hadn't been existing, right, in a desert region like Afghanistan, like the Sahara, like people in Iraq, Syria for millennia. And so and that's what it means to be indigenous. That's a big part of what indigenous is, right? Is people that have existed in a place for not forever. Nobody's existed anywhere forever. Everything is dialectically moving and changing, but they have existed in a place for some time, and they are people that have evolved authentically a culture. Maybe they not even necessarily be in one place. Like in like I just said, the people of the Pacific are constantly moving, right? And so that but they're people that have evolved a way and a culture based on a territory, a region, a type of territory, like the Kanaka Moana are people of the Pacific. That, again, it's interesting, right? Because actually, if you look at it in terms of actual total square mileage, the Kanaka Moana, the Pacific peoples like Polynesian, Melanesian, Micronesian, I mean, these are Western categorizations and taxonomies of our people. But if you look at all the people of the Pacific, our population is not that. I mean, it's like a few, maybe 10 million, if you add them all up. But we actually have the largest landmass. We have the largest total square mileage of territory of any people, because we're actually like half of the Earth if you add it all up, all the way to Madagascar again. So all of the Indian Ocean, actually, if you include that, but definitely all the Pacific, that's already 1/3 of the Earth's surface. Every other continent would fit inside of that region that we travel across to grab a Sprite. You know, I mean, if we were all doing it in that way, but and so, you know, it also complicates, but that you know, being in a specific place is a you know, it kind of goes back to that whole thing we're talking about with like the conception of what is the land, right? What is the physical territory, and what is the you know, what that means, right? Is different, right? It's a thing that you walk over and you traverse over. It's a thing that you pull towards you, right? And land is also important, of course, for Hawaii. The Aina, where it is the land, right? And that is also very, very important. And you know, it like water in a desert, physical, solid ground has a similar sort of importance because it is not as plentiful, let's say, as a continent, right? Continent, you take a mile, 2 mile, 10, 100, 1,000 miles in any direction, you're going to find more land, right? Well, you know, it's just a lot of it. In the ocean, it's not infinite. You know, you have an island, you have you know, 60 miles this way, 10 miles that way, you know, and then you're in the ocean again, right? In an atoll, this tiny, where Satawal, Marshall Islands, Bikini Atoll, where the United States nuked 56 times and caused massive radiation and did experiments to see if children could be born with jellyfish eyes, and didn't do anything for the Micronesian people for a long time, and that was horrific. But in those atolls, random sidebar dunking on imperialism and colonialism and genocide aside, atolls are strips of less than 1 square mile. They're 3 feet above the water in a crescent-like shape with, you know, beautiful aquamarine white sand lagoons, and you know, they're very idyllic. The bikini consumerist boomer era swimwear design comes from an island called Bikini in the Marshall Islands in the Pacific, where the United States nuked Radio Bikini, documentary on America blowing up all of its nuclear bombs all over indigenous people of the Pacific. So that Bikini Atoll is tiny, though. It's not actually that big. The land area is very small, and so land, you know, Aina, which is the word that means physical, the solid land, right? Has that particular, not to say that indigenous people don't also respect land in Turtle Island or continents. That's not what I'm trying to say. But it has a particular meaning for people of the Pacific, where ocean is plentiful, but the ocean is also respected, obviously. You know, the moana, the heart of the ocean, right, is you know, this is, you know, it is also what also gives life, and it feeds and everything else, and sustains as well. But Aina has a particular significance because it is rarer, let's say. So let me come back to this. So you know, when they're handling the gourd, right? It's about when Boba Fett is learning about the gourd, he's learning about an indigenous way of existence that is unknown to people who have not lived there for very long, because they recently settled there, or maybe they settled to colonize there, like the Pike Syndicate, who are driving their hovercraft railroad trains, railroading their settler colonialism and capitalism as a kind of international silk plundering route, not a silk road. They're taking spice and they're moving it through and then killing everyone who's trying to stop them. That's what they want Tatooine for. And it's in the story of Boba Fett. They're the Pike Syndicate. In Boba Fett, the Pike Syndicate are known as the Syndicate, or the Pike family, are a bunch of fishmen. No, it's a syndicate of sashimi syndicate. No, is the Pikes a spice dealership with the spice cartel that operated in the criminal underworld from the homeworld Obadiah. They also participate in the crime raids on Mandalore. Death Watch rule on said planet. So the Pikes are, they're a larger organized mafia. So the Pike Syndicate are the United States and the UK, basically. The Pike Syndicate are the West. Remember I had the whole Cowboy Bebop one about how the entire Western world is just a giant cartel mafia. So the Pike Syndicate are, crypto encoded, Marlon Brando-led Godfather mafia, because the West can't stand to call itself what it is, which is a giant gangster murder cartel for moving narco, opium, silk tea, and Bolivian blood-covered silver up and down the planet's ocean routes with a bunch of guns, pointing them at anyone who doesn't do exactly what they say. That's the difference between the mafia and a real mafia, right? The wannabe mafia, they point little revolvers, and sometimes they get the blowtorch and the pliers, and they give you cement shoes. That's the wannabe mafia. The real mafia have USS Bostons with fucking guns, real guns, like Gerald Ford aircraft carrier F-35s guns. Now they tend to be dropped. That's the real mafia. When you got gunboats, then you're the real deal. The wannabe, they just run around Los Angeles with fucking, revolvers. They got the Tommy gun, and those are the wannabe mafia. The real mafia come at you with an armada of, 10-inch wide fucking cannons pointed at all of your houses. They pointed at your capital, like Iolani Palace in Hawaii, and they say, you're gonna not have universal health care. Your language is dead. You're gone, because we got to plunder one half of the Earth's population called Asia. We must have Hawaii to get our share of China. That's the real mafia. So the Pike Syndicate are the United States and the UK and France and Spain and Rome, of course. Showing up in the people of the Pacific and the people of the deserts region, and other just people just trying to survive, fucking everyone over, and they have to survive by becoming cyberpunks, or hurting each other to get their basic needs met, let's say, right? By becoming criminals, stealing, selling drugs, hurting other people's bodies, just broken themselves and then breaking other people around them, hurting other people around them because they've hurt themselves, and then that's Tatooine. Tatooine is just Earth. Anyways, so the Pike Syndicate show up, and they want to move the spice through the planet Tatooine, which has sand people on it, which has the people of Freetown, right? That's why I have this little image for our stream today. I took a bunch of people from the show. In the top right of this image, you have the sand people. You have Boba Fett, right? Survivor of a broken way of being called selling billions of clones of myself for money. To make war for empires. And Boba Fett has worked as a bounty hunter, as a professional killer, right? As somebody who has gone it alone, it's not about, as Mike Pondsmith, Cyberpunk 2077's creator, would say, it's not about saving the world, it's about saving yourself. That's Cyberpunk, which is like all dystopias. Cyberpunk as a branch of dystopian science fiction is about broken Western barbarian, unhealed peoples of the Archelan trauma of Europe, looking at themselves and projecting their own terribleness into the future, right? And saying, look at how shit we are. But that individual rational self-interest, it's capitalistic. It is the cowboy, And I don't think it's a mistake that the character that plays the arch nemesis, or one major arch nemesis in Boba Fett, is a guy that is a gunslinger, This gunslinging guy with his where's his gun? Yeah. So the gunslinger, right? What is the gunslinger? He looks like Clint Eastwood. He's a individual. Well, he's not white. He's blue because he's blue blood. He's extra white. It's a guy with a gun. It's a lone individual with a gun. There's a reason why the cowboys that were depicted in 50s science fiction, 50s movies like, Good, the Bad, the Ugly, all of the John Wayne films, Cowboys and Indians. It's about, basically lying about genocide and how justified or not it was, and lying about what America was built on. But also it was about lone individuals as opposed to collective unions, collective socialist communist parties coming together for the mutual benefit of all against a capitalist, individualist, unjust hierarchical economic and social structure. And so the individual lone ranger, the gun slinger, the angry guy with the gun, who is also an unhealed, traumatized person of the World War II trauma, and come back and is now fucking Humphrey Bogart walking and reharming other people in the city because he got harmed in that war, having to kill people that he didn't need to for Empire. The gun slinger of the 50s Hollywood movie was also designed by Ayn Rand, the great ex-communist extraordinaire who wrote the motion pictures guide for the preservation of American values, like straight up CIA, anti-communist shit. She literally wrote the manifesto that said, no, always depict strong individual entrepreneurs in a good light, never depict them badly. These are the rules for Hollywood, and they were followed to a T. Always never glorify collectives, unions, and cooperation. Always show competition as a more important than cooperation. Individuals above groups. Never denigrate the United States of America. It can only ever do positive things in the world. Never denigrate the system of capitalism. Never denigrate do not, it's basically make communism and collectivism and anything left of Joseph Biden seem like shit, and make everything right, white, American, and individualistic seem good. And that's what the cowboys were about. That's what the lone individuals were about. The CIA also instructed the entire English department, the entire academic system, to write individual-centered. That's a lot of the Jack Kerouac, which is a lot of interesting, good novels. But they wanted stories that didn't involve collective political group action. Have individual sensorium, show don't tell analysis. Talk about how the blue mutant carp feels next to the bamboo shoots, and talk about the experiential, in-person, individual. Actually cyberpunk is a very self-enclosed system of looking inside of myself and being inside of myself, and the self, which is the way that we do sense the world, but it is a lot of it locked up in itself too much, and my individual senses and my feelings, and that the touch of this synthetic a glove against the Ono Sendai Cyberspace 7, and it's all very individualistic. That was actually implanted. The style of fiction writing was pushed away from political, group, collective, large-scale actions in universities and English and literature departments of the West. They were actually pushed to individualize, personal, apolitical, non-didactic writing. But what they mean is apolitical, and by apolitical what they mean is don't deal with the capitalist, white supremacist colonial hegemony that rules the United States. Just do apolitical, talk about how fun and how cool it is to surf that wave, and the feel of the salt against your skin, and how it hurt to personally lose your job, and how you got back on your feet by fighting, and the taste of the steak that you had. Only talk about the personal detail. Don't talk about the group in the wider picture. That was actually instructed into the United States, and that's why William Gibson writes the way that he dodoes. But anyways, he actually has said, I don't do political. But that's not him. That's the entire. He's a science fiction author that wrote the prequel to Cyberpunk 2077, the Godfather of Cyberpunk, Neuromancer, and The Matrix. He says that because that's what the entire academic world was instructed, and he spent 10 plus years as a professional student in British Columbia, in academia, in literature specifically, and that's what they teach you. Don't do political. Apolitical, individual, self-sensorineural focused, show don't tell. Don't tell anybody to do anything. Don't tell anybody, and definitely don't tell true history. If you're gonna tell any history, don't tell the true history, right? Just make up some shit about how like London was the best, and they broke and reshaped Japan into a cool little, cool little anime and robot dog giving a fountain of Asian boing boing nerd fodder, right? Not that Japan was nuked, destroyed, and all of Asia was plundered for the last fucking century and a half to 5. Give some bullshit about how there's cool stuff for us to look at. That's what science fiction and cyberpunk and literature is for in the West. Anyways, sorry I have to go in and install all that, but you know, somebody had to say it. Bane Cod, or Cod Bane, Cad Bane, Cad, you know, the Cadbury Bunny fights Boba Fett, and much chocolate is spilled. No, I'm just kidding. Bane Cod is a cowboy gunslinger guy who represents the individual, selfish, normal Western person, right? The cowboy, the DOD Pentagon official who's gonna have a revolving door insta placement into a Raytheon executive ship. The individual Canada marcher wanting freedom for my individual self, right? Screwing over even his own children, using them as human shields. That individual, the individual lord slapping each other and harming all of their feudal serfs by starvation and setting off to needless wars, right? The Sun King. All of the individual focused, selfish individual, not even caring about their own families, let alone their society, let alone other people that don't even look like them. Are you kidding me? Like Asians, Pacific people, or black people, or brown people, or non-Christians. Are you kidding me? Hell no. So though the Cade Bane Cod represents kind of like a kind of apotheosis of that. And he says, Boba, I know you. You're a white person, basically. I know you, Boba. You are a killer. You're a killer. You've gone soft. The only thing that matters is yourself. Anything else is weakness. That's what he says, right? Bane Cod says, like, right? You look out for A number 1. Just like in Escape from New York. A dystopian movie written about one of few self-examining Hollywood directors whose name is escaping my fucking brain because I didn't get enough sleep. Kurt Russell stars in They Live director Perturbator had an entire genre of music revolving around his fucking name. What's that guy name? Big Trouble in Little China's director. John Carpenter. Why the fuck I can't remember. Anyways, yeah, too late. You know, you screwed that. You screwed that guitar solo up. You screwed that vocal, political, lyrical guitar solo up. No, so Bane Cod represents like a depiction of an apotheosis of a way of being. I would argue. You know, I don't know if that was all designed by the writers. You know, but that's what I'm reading into it now. And he tells Boba, because Boba is trying to be different through this show, right? Boba is trying to, right? He is just some random gunfire. He's a random capitalist, mercenary, no class or historical consciousness. It's just me, my guns, my knee-mounted homing missile launcher, my back-mounted RPG, my laser sights, my cool guns and shit. That's all I got. I got lots of guns sold to me by Raytheon and Lockheed Martin and Smith & Wesson, and motherfucker, I'm gonna use them for myself. I don't care about history. I don't care about the past. I don't care who you are. You know, good guy, bad guy, killer, murderer. I'm just a gun for hire. In it for A number 1, just like everyone else in the West, right? Even just like Macron going, hey, how come Australia got to sell $90 billion of weapons to the United States? Why didn't we get in on that, right? Even at that level, everybody's just slap fighting each other. How come he got the executive promotion to VP marketing? Well, it's because he backstabbed everyone else in the office. You should have been more ruthless, right? In the competitive forge of capitalist rat racing, iPhone and Prada over-consuming competition with your gross disposable income called corporate life, which is about constantly competing, right? Not non-competing, not unionizing, which is what America made the Hollywood movies for, made strong individual gunslingers force to get you to glorify that and then break out of the unions. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And then Reagan breaks the flight workers union. Because they've already been defamed. People, they've lost faith in them by the time you get to the 80s, right? Communist Party, Socialist Party, where are they? Gone. Collective bad, individual good, right? But that's just the Western way, that is, you know, and it's really, I would argue, actually, the communist and socialist parties that started evolving in the United States was too much indigeneity seeping back into America for America's own liking. So what is all this Asian shit? What is all this indigenous, what is this red, Asian, yellow peril, red scare commie stuff inside of my beautiful star-spangled Roman Empire? No, absolutely not. You're a killer, like your father before you, that killed all the Indians and then killed the black people that stood up in Haiti, and you lynched them, right? You're a killer, like your British before you, who killed 27 million Indians and blamed it on their savagery. You're a killer, like the Romans, who killed everyone who stood up when they said kneel down. You're a killer. You're not a collaborator. You're an individual killer, and you bow down to the mightiest, biggest killer, and you work for them because you're a gun for hire, like all of your fellow Americans and Canadians and British and everyone else who were broken by the biggest killers at the time, 2,000 years ago. So get back to killing. Don't be like in Peacemaker. There's a character, the White Dragon. It's a really great character. Heads up basically a Ku Klux Klan, but you know, some of it's like, you know, there's actually more Nazis in that, and not everybody who just wears, you know, some of those who work forces are the same who burn crosses. But anyway, but he's a very good symbol of, like, you know, and he's a father. He says, son, you are a commie. You slept with unclean blood, meaning non-white women, black, brown, yellow women. He said, you slept with unclean women of unclean blood. The white supremacist father of Peacemaker. Let me get him. You know, you slept with women of unclean blood. You slept with men. Unacceptable. You're dirty. You're he calls them all kind of slurs. You know, you killed your brother. I mean, it's actually his dad that, you know, I can't give it all away, but you know, it's his dad is like blaming for all this stuff. But, and also he's like, and you aren't a real man. You're not a type A man. You didn't want to sit on a throne of Chinese skulls. You lay with a Chinese person. You have debased your great white blood. You're supposed to be a killer like me. For America. Against communism. Against those Asians. Against the rising non-white peoples. That's what you were meant to be. You were supposed to join the military, go to Afghanistan, and put them all down. You're supposed to be a man. You're supposed to put down all the gays in your community. You're supposed to, that was what you were supposed to be. You know? You, and he calls him, and he's like, you know, you woman, right? So anyway, what am I saying about that? So, you know, let me get out of Peacemaker. So when Boba Fett is like being told by the Cad Bane guy, you're getting soft. It's basically the same thing. It's like you know the truth. The truth is there is only one way, right? The true way, which is the way of the West. Not the Wild West, but the whole West. The way of the Empire, right? You bow down before the biggest gun boat, and you take your 6-shooter gun out, and you shoot for the gunboat. You shoot on behalf of the Empire, right? For money, for a cut. You know? Get wrapped up in the flag a little bit. But at the end of the day, you know, the truth is everything is barbarism. Everything is violence. Might makes right. That's the only true law. And Boba Fett's like, and Boba has done it. He was a gun for hire, right? He took the bounty out on Han, right? He took the bounty out on whoever would pay him the most money. Jabba the Hutt, right? Whoever would pay him the most money. The U.S. is paying you $200,000 plus COLA and a GI Bill college education if you join the military, right? America is the biggest cartel. They just pay you the big money. You want to have a nice, decent life, join the U.S. military. That's what they're telling. They're not necessarily giving the military that good, but that's what they say. There will only be CIA propaganda. They're putting $500 million out right now. Congress is pushing a bill through to counter China, to make to degrade, literally they say to degrade and to attack China. Not to write articles on China, but specifically to attack, right? There will only be war propagandists, military and police jobs soon in the United States. they're the only living wage jobs anyway. Is you're working for one of those three entities or Wall Street. So you're the bean counter for the pike, or you're the gun puller for the pike. That's it. And the Cad Bane guy gets hired by the pikes, and he says, and so anyway, so Boba Fett is formerly a stormtrooper, basically working for the Empire. He worked for the Empire, doing violence for money, for a piece of the pie, of the plunder, of the savagery, of the genocide, of the colonialism, of the capitalism. And but then he encounters the Sand People, right? And that's the real growth. He's like, maybe there's another way to exist in this world other than being a win-lose colonizer, a barbarian, a mercenary, a bounty hunter, a killer for hire. You know, like the Mandalorian is also doing that, right? Although he has his own code, but you know, like a lot of other people in the Star Wars universe, they're just surviving the wreckage of Empire. So Boba Fett learns though from the people of the Sand, right? Who also have they have their own ways and their culture they ask for respect, right? And if you disrespect their culture, then they might have to deal with that. But they exist with their environment. They exist with the other tribes, in a network of respect. But when the invaders come, like indigenous people in Turtle Island, being railroaded through with settler colonists, killing, slaughtering, like I talked about, there's scenes, in very brutal scenes, where the indigenous people of the Sand People, the Tuskens, just get slaughtered by the pikes, by the capitalists. They get attacked by they get attacked by the regular settler colonial small C capitalist trucker envoy types, you know, like the town people, not trusted. Nobody cares to talk to them. Everybody just like, right, is there to incur and impinge on and to settler colonize and take their land for the benefit of the settler, and so or the benefit of the empire in the imperial capitalists in the case of the railroad Pike Syndicate. Pike Syndicate are like they're like the Hawaiian, they're like the people in Hawaii. They're like the Pike Syndicate are kind of like the U.S. empire with Mr. McKinley saying we must have our fair share of China. Hawaii will be the ocean platform which we will move our spice, and by spice I mean we're gonna move all of the silk, tea, copper, and trillions of dollars of products from Asia, and we're gonna move our gunboats through Pearl Harbor, right? So Hawaii is literally like the ocean Tuscan people's region, right? But we're having Pearl Harbor and Red Hill F-22 and aircraft carrier fuel poisoning our water because of the railroading, the ocean railroading of this huge military bases in Okinawa, of course, Guam, etc. is just being shoved and growing and like tumors all over our people, and it literally has killed us already. Many of us killed our culture, definitely killed our language, killed our universal healthcare, and also the water is killing us, literally. Children being poisoned, dying. So by the United States, Oahu Red Hill fuel that is still leaking as we speak into the water, and the U.S. is still suing the state of Hawaii to keep the U.S. military to not defuel the Red Hill 250 million gallon, world's largest U.S. Largest underground storage tanks 100 feet above our aquifer. So anyway, so that's the reality that comes back into. So Boba Fett learns a different way to be, right? It's called living collectively as a family in win-win respect with each other, from tribe to tribe, right? They teach him the Sand People teach him how to harvest the water from the underground gourds and to live in the natural habitat of the desert, right? They teach him how of the danger of the desert, the giant six-legged, kind of like cross between a giant dog, a bear, and a centipede creature. They teach him their martial art, the weapon based on the Fijian stick, the gaffy that they use. They teach him their ways. They have their ceremonies with him, and he earns their respect, and it becomes like a part of that family. And so that, to me, that's about signifying the indigenous ways which the Department of Indian Affairs, right? The United States Department of Indian Affairs that literally said, let me see if I have that exact quote here. Yeah, so as the U.S. Commissioner of Indian Affairs said in 1838, common property and civilization cannot coexist. That was in 1838. This is the United States, the West, recognizing, as they were railroading and cowboy massacring and gunslinging and killing all the indigenous people of Turtle Island, of North America, to build the United States over the dead bodies with black stolen slaves. Common property and civilization cannot coexist, is what they said. Founding fathers of the United States equated capitalism with civilization. They had to, given their mentality. To them, civilization meant society, which was a capitalist society. Therefore, from the earliest times, wars against Indians were not only to take over their land, but also to squash the threatening example of indigenous people, the indigenous nations communism. The shorthand for that was Indian. Of course, you know that's not. Anyway, Western failure to navigate the oceans is part of why they're still called Indians. But anyways, by some people. But so the civilization meant capitalist or feudalist, and they really all come together, as I've kind of talked about before. Capitalist, feudalist, colonialist, barbarist, individual, self-oriented, at the best, some property rights, some laws, and representative democracy that's actually cover for a de facto plutocracy, right? And so that's civilization. And so the collective common property communism, that's the way that the West described the indigenous peoples, was they can't coexist. These are two different ways. Similar, that's why anti-communism in the 20th century, right, was the U.S. and the Soviet Union and China cannot coexist. The U.S. and right? Why do they fight wars in Vietnam? To prevent the spread of communism, right? What is the U.S. still doing? What is the U.S. still doing in Xinjiang, right? Trying to prevent the spread of the Belt and Road to spread win-win cooperative collectivism, socialism, communism. What are they doing in Ukraine? Trying to prevent the spread of counter-hegemonic powers that can assist the rest of Cuba, the rest of Vietnam, Laos, Bolivia, African countries trying to get out from under colonial $450 trillion continued plunder, right? So the indigenous people of Turtle Island represent just the one piece of a multi-century, if not multi-millennia struggle between the, a point I make often, which is the imperial, barbaristic, hierarchical, unjustly hierarchical, etc., capitalist, colonialist, slavist, win-lose way versus the win-win cooperative, but with respect way. Not to say completely never violent, but always as a last resort and always only in defense, self-defense, not going around and plundering and killing everything else. That's offense, right? In case people don't understand that in the West. Captain America has a shield to pretend like America defends anything. America doesn't defend anyone. All it does is attack. It attacks its own people with 70 million malnutrition deaths. 70 million malnutrition, 45 times more malnutrition deaths than Vietnam, and shorter lifespans than Cuba, despite having the most per capita wealth in the world. And it definitely doesn't defend the United States, the rest of the planet. We know this, right? It kills millions in Iraq, Afghanistan. It caused 500,000 deaths from sanctions alone in the 90s in Iraq, 40,000 in Venezuela in 2019. It coups, it overthrows, it plunders, it kills my culture, it bans languages like Hawaiian, like countless other indigenous people. It wipes them out. That's what the U.S. does. It doesn't defend anything. All it does is attack. It doesn't even defend its own people. The United States doesn't defend its own colonels' children. Its top 2% highest brass of the U.S. military have children who are vomiting up their intestines with chemical burns in their mouth, their eyes swollen shut. Infants of colonels making $300,000 a year. They don't even care about those people. They don't defend them with jet fuel. The U.S. defends nothing. That's a win-lose way. You know, that's a offensive, attacking, barbaristic way. You know, that's a pike way. That's a gunslinger. You know, that's not defending anything. Now their goal is to make you think, oh, it's Russia and China and everyone that we're fighting is the aggressor. That's the attacker, right? Who is on the U.S.? What Chinese ship is sailing up and down? What Russian and Chinese ships are sailing up and down, aiming guns into Washington D.C. right now? Right? U.S. is right up against Moscow and Russia and China, in Taiwan and in Ukraine. They're like right on their border, and they're in more bases than the rest of. U.S. has more countries, 800 bases around the world, in more countries than not. China has like one at request of by UN declaration, and Russia goes in to get other U.S. bases out because no one else is fucking doing it, you know. So, you know, and assist with U.S. incursions, which is different from showing up and bombing an entire country and then plundering trillions of dollars worth of their resources and growing poppy all over it, like Afghanistan. Like cooing whoever we want to secure the lithium, like in Bolivia. Like they don't do that in these other places. China just shows, for example, is Bolivia. China shows up 50% for you, 50% for us. Win-win. The US shows up, bomb you, murder you, Elon Musk, coup you, slaughter you. 99% for US, Elon, and Germany. 1% for indigenous people who are starving. That's just it's reasserting colonial win-lose barbaristic structures with violence. The Chinese didn't go in with guns. They didn't go and back a coup to install a Chinese-friendly government. The United States did that. Elon Musk did that, and Germany helped them out because Germany wanted to get a part of that deal. So they got to figure out to stop doing that kind of shit, you know. So, anyways, but back to the Boba Fett. So, you know, so you have the Sand people learning how to not. Teaching Boba Fett there's another way to do things other than that, right? And live respectfully, collectively, in an indigenous way. And then he goes, oh my God. And later on, he comes to the point where he could actually start to, you know, he basically takes over for Jabba the Hutt, right? And he says, I will rule by respect, not by fear, right? That's another way. It's ruled by fear. Barbarism is ruled by fear. Like, scared that you're going to get shot, killed, speared, bombed into the Stone Age, sanctioned, police brutality, evicted by police, people with guns, you know, beaten up, imprisoned, neck knelt on, shot, you know, etc. Fear, right? Fear that you're going to lose your job by the violence of capitalism. Fear that you're going to not be able to meet your healthcare, housing, food, and other basic needs because of the violence that capitalism is going to put into you. It's fear. It's all fear, right? And so when Boba Fett says, I'm not going to rule by fear, I'm going to rule by respect, right? Another aspect of respect is when you do win-win cooperation, it requires that you actually respect the other party that you're dealing with, right? Whereas colonization does not require respect. Colonization requires disrespect, right? Which is, and the retail racism and interpersonal violence inside of the United States is part of the wholesale violence. It is the exhaust and the artifact of the wholesale violence of the wars and the imperialism abroad. When you attack Muslims over there, you get anti-Muslim violence here, right? When you both because of they're upset and also because your own people are trained and ingrained with anti-Muslim demonization so that you are justifying that war. When you're trying to start cold, warm, or hot wars on China to stop your Thucydides trap overtaking and to make money for the military-industrial complex because you're running out of wars in Afghanistan. When you start anti-Asian racism to make war over there, you're going to get anti-Asian racism over here. And so respect, but when you are doing a respect-based society, a win-win cooperative-based society, you know, you say, well, how about you get 50% and you win, and then we'll also win, right? How about we learn about your culture, right? Cultural exchange is actually part of this whole thing. I said in the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, part of it is culture exchange. It's not just economic exchange and goods and services. soybeans and lithium resources in exchange for technology transfer, know-how, and technological plants and loans and a satellite. It's not just economic, it's actually cultural transfer is part of, and understanding is part of the transfer, which is part of the respect, right? You can't respect someone if you, for example, keep saying karaoke and they tell you, hey, that's not how you say it, and they carelessly, I don't even care about your culture, right? You're all a bunch of, slur. The slurs that are profligate in the U.S. and the West, right? And people using them so much, and the righter you get, the more, is also an artifact of the necessary disrespect of a barbarous culture, And the U.S. over the last 20 years has just been showing its ass. It's always been a barbarous, disrespectful culture, right? It doesn't care about the black people that it enslaved. It doesn't care about the indigenous people, so it calls them N-words. And it's like, why can't I just say it? Why can't I just say that word? It doesn't care about the indigenous people that it stole its land from, and that's why it's like, well, what are all these whining little people? You guys got conquered. Shut up, right? Red something slur. Why can't I just say that? Stop being a woke cancel culturalist. That's just the barbarians trying to make money and make hay of, from lies to justify continuing to do barbarism, and the blowback is more slurs and more bigotry and more hatred, which is part and parcel of continued plunder and continued barbarism. Poverty denigration actually is part for the capitalist class. You're a lazy bum. You're a welfare queen. Get off of your butt. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You loser worker. You didn't have enough job. You're not smart enough. You're not good enough. Poverty shaming and poverty punching down denigration from the capitalists is required to continue the exploitation and plunder across economic class lines. That's why it's banned on TikTok. You can't fan out stacks of $100 bills. You can't do grifty, spend $50 a week on my lose weight quick, a tee, or my LuLaRoe leggings pyramid scheme. You can't, and you can't poverty shame me. Look how successful I am. I have a jet and a Jeep behind me, and you can't wealth glorify and you can't poverty shame on TikTok. Thousands of people actually lost their accounts because of that. Because why? Because that instills. In China, the Communist Party have decided that will instill a culture and a way of being amongst people, especially young people who are growing up in that new hustle, boss, entrepreneur, NFT, get money, get rich quick culture that's enculturating in those young people a way of being that is about disrespect those that are less off and respect those that are better off. It's about making a win-lose economic class barbaristic way that is not conducive to Shakang Shahui, collective moderate prosperity for all, which is about win-win respect between people across economic lines. And also, eventually it comes to also then, because then the racialized capitalism, those things kind of come together. Because if you can figure out another way to weaponize somebody's ethnic minority or different ethnic status to make more money or to push them down in a win-lose culture, then people start to do that. They will do that. That's all of Joe Rogan's podcasts and all of his friends. And everybody's still getting upset about, there's too many black people in my Star Wars. Or too many women, or something. Anyways, intergalactic family though. So Boba Fett learns that there's another way to do things. He brings together Sand people. He brings together the pig people. He brings together lots of other people. Cyberpunk kids growing up in a dystopian Western world that's like space London. They all speak British accents. You have like modded out arms. It's just like very cyberpunk. They're driving like let me get a close up picture of one of the mods actually. They're the mods. They're driving these bikes, right? It's kind of like, they have these like cybernetic mods on them. They have like cybernetic enhancements. They look like it's like Cyberpunk 2077 characters basically. It's basically like, hey, the kids like Cyberpunk 2077. Let's get all the kids out there with these cool these cool bikes. But you know, the bike gang, you know, it harkens back to Akira also. You know, there was a whole thing in the 80s and late 70s, 80s, but which is where cyberpunk originated. But Akira also was one of the original like Japanese cyberpunk shows with bike gangs. But anyway, so these are kind of like the lost, you know, if you think of it that way, cyberpunk is about the lost children, parentless, inside of broken late stage Roman imperial complexes, you know, that are trying to build something, family, survive in London, in New York with William Gibson, where he picks up Neuromancer, the cup of dystopia that he brought back to Toronto in Canada to write Neuromancer, of, you know, people with sleeveless jean jackets, stitched together jeans because they can't afford new ones, pins and green mohawks and sleeveless jean jackets and spikes everywhere, right? Because they're pissed off broke ass kids with no jobs in downtown Boston and downtown Manhattan and in you know, Vancouver, you know, smoking pot, like trying to figure out what they're gonna do with their life, you know, listening to records, playing cheap broken guitars badly, and screaming about, you know, not Nazi punks, fuck off, and you know, you know, smash a bang if you got real balls. That's something that they said in the song. That's not a TOS violation. In Dead Kennedy's music. But anyway, so it's about upset young people in the dying urban cores of Trump, Reagan, Thatcher era 80s neoliberal form of capitalism, post anti-communist successful onslaught against unions, socialism, and the left in the United States. Whatever was growing there by the time you get to 1980s, wipe out the flight workers union, and it's been a downhill slide. I don't know if you know. You might have noticed that over the last 40 years. But anyways, and cyberpunk comes from a lot of that. It's an upset. Hey, what happened to my future? My boomer parents could work one job with a high school diploma or not, painting, painting with no special education, and they could enough to have 2 Thunderbirds, 1.5 kids, a bouncy castle in the front yard, and a nice suburban house. And I'm over here, what the fuck? I'm like what am I doing? I gotta get like an analyst degree and work at Nakatomi Plaza with fucking Rachel, the replicant shoulder pads, just to make enough to make ends meet. Anyway, so that's cyberpunk. Cyberpunk is a bunch of educated people like William Gibson with no job and too many college diplomas. So writing books about the shit future that they don't see for themselves. So with lots of mods and artificial intelligence and 7-function force feedback, Russian wartime prosthetics, and mycotoxins that are going to kill all the talent in their brain. Like Escape from New York, which is around the same time. But anyway, what am I talking about this? So the mods are groups of the lost children of the imperial metropole cities, I would argue. They're the urban people that come together they find a newfound family, right? These childless children, these parentless children, kind of like Protege and Neofeud, right? Parentless children on their Akira bikes and their cyberpunk retractable, sword arms, and their, telescope cyborg eye implants, and their sleeveless jean jackets, pissed off because the capitalist landlord is charging them 90% of their salary for rent, and also is cutting off their moisture. The moisture farmer baron is like charging them exorbitant amounts for their water, and so Boba helps them with their Gen Z / millennial capitalist hyper exploitation problems, because they're kids, right? They're like, I can barely live with this. We have no water, and the water costs like way too much. So they're upset and they're fighting back against it, as they should. The collective organization and stuff like that the Gen Z are doing, right? And not super down with this whole capitalism and this colonialism crap. So Boba Fett gives them the respect that they never had, the biker gang, and says, if you work with me, I will tell, I as the local leader here, I will tell that water baron, right? It's like, Boba Fett is the Chinese government. Boba Fett is the VCP, the Vietnamese Communist Party. Boba Fett is the Cuban government. They're going, we don't have a perfect world yet, but I will do my best to give you what you need by, trying to cut off the heads of 15 billionaires, and it reined in private equity, a real estate Ponzi scheme, 0809 financial crisis causes like at Evergrande, which were a lot of Western Wall Street speculators bidding up real estate in China to make another, naughties suburban global heist in China. The Chinese Communist Party is like Boba Fett going, he knocks down the water baron and he goes, I will knock down the private equity. I will knock down the big techs. There's no more 996 jobs where you're so hyper exploited. We're going to have common prosperity. No more of a handful of people like water baron, like Immortan Joe in Boba Fett, cutting off your water unless you give him 99% of all of your labor value. No more of this crap. I will do that for you because I'm the government here. I will, and then you get your need, which is you get to get water at a normal, acceptable, reasonable rate, but you have to, in return, you have to work with me. You have to work for me. You're as fighters because they know how to fight. So Boba Fett is playing in the sense of, I talk about the chess versus the Go. The West is about playing chess, which is a game about conquering and controlling to crush and destroy for your personal benefit, win-lose, right? And Go is a game of finding similarities, finding places of connection, respecting. You have to respect even to learn who a person is. Finding out ways that you can work together and coexisting for mutual benefit. Connecting to win on both sides. That's what Go is actually about. Chess has mostly pawns and a king and a queen, and everyone dies for the king. On both sides, everyone dies. The poor all die, right? The peasants all die. The slaves definitely die. Everyone dies. Everyone suffers. And the king wins on a decreasingly smaller number of people, and then has to go to the next place, take their people, and put them into a new imperial machine and kill the rest of the world, right? That's what they've been doing since the Europeans got out of Europe. So you have to crush and take and control and kill to dominate, right? And chess is Go is about win. It's an Eastern game. It's about connecting to win. It's an indigenous game, I would argue. It's about connecting and finding places of respect to win. Not to say there will never be conflict, but the final goal of the game, the overarching narrative of the game is how do we connect to each other to coexist, despite the problems that we may have. The goal in chess is not. The goal in chess is to annihilate. Right? We cannot coexist. Peace, like in Independence Day, there can be no peace. You exist or we exist. There can be only one. To quote Highlander, which is also based off of the Motion Picture's Guide to Preservation of American Values and that run-up. There can be only one. There will be English or there will be Hawaiian. And I think it's going to be Hawaiian. I think it's going to be English. Because we're bigger and we have bigger guns. So goodbye Hawaiian language. There can be only one. There can be Sioux or there can be English. Cut your hair off and wipe that language out of your mouth. Because we have the bigger guns and we're more ruthless. There can be Spanish or there can be Quechua. And I think you're going to go work in our silver mine so we can send that silver off to make a deal with our trade imbalances for the silk and tea that we're trying to get out of China. Because guess what, indigenous people of South America? We have the bigger, badder swords and guns, and now you are all going to speak Spanish, and now you are all going to die. And now you are gone. That's the game of the colonizer. That's the game of chess. Go is about having 56 separate ethnic regions in a place like China or Vietnam, actually. Not with zero conflict, but the goal is continued coexistence. And then reaching out to the rest of the Silk Road, all the way to Palmyra and Syria, all the way to the islands of the Luchu Kingdom or Okinawa, and connecting along an international trade route, right? The Chinese didn't wipe out all of the Uchinanchu people to bring it into the fold of its trade actual network, right? They didn't wipe out the other internal languages within the Han network. Actually, there's not actually a single race. It's actually many different peoples, but they're just called the Han. in China. And they also have the autonomous regions that have more autonomy for reasons of they have there's historical and cultural reasons that they're given additional autonomy. But the goal is still, whether it's more in-house or more, you know, in the international world or along the Silk Road, the goal is across the entire Silk route, right? The spice, actual the old trading route, is to connect, to cooperate, right? I trade you our, you know, naan and our particular type of goat, tandoori wrapped meat in Xinjiang, because we have an arid desert region that doesn't have a lot of green life that grows there, so we have a lot more animal products, because that's the bioregion we live in, right? In sustainably for thousands of years. And we're going to take that and we'll trade that next door to you in, you know, Afghanistan for some of your different clothes and your different products. And then we're going to take some of that to the next region. We're going to visit, we're going to be in India. We're going to get the different turmeric and cumin and other spices that are there. We're going to trade those to the next region. You get all the way to Ethiopia, or Ethiopia as it was, to Djibouti, major trade hub. And we're going to trade the African metals and golds and musical instruments and stories and other products that they're having, clothing and art and culture in Africa, and we're gonna in Djibouti, and then we're gonna move up into the, you know, what's the Euphrates and the Tigris, you know, the Sumerian, you know, the it's Syria, right? Iraq, some of the most ancient cities in this region, and then we're gonna trade there with a lot of that. One of the even older civilizations products, and then we're gonna come back across. Anyway, you know what I'm saying. We're connecting across an international network of economic and cultural exchange in peace to mutually benefit and enrich each other's existences, understanding and respecting each other. And if we have problems, we solve these problems internally as non-violently as possible, but sometimes we have to do other things, but you don't resort immediately to that. Whereas the Europeans that were cut out of this network for a long time, because their first inclination is to wipe out, to take from the dead bodies, and then to impose their way on everyone else. And a missionary is a cultural colonizer, basically, as part of that process. Culturally, economically, violent. I mean, and they're still doing that to this day. That's what AUKUS and that's what the IMF and I almost said the IMDb. The IMDb is to keep track of all your shitty Hollywood movies. No. The IMF and the World Bank and the WTO, backed by the literal guns of the U.S. military and its nukes and its aircraft, its overpriced aircraft carriers and its jets, are the continuation of that process of killing physically, culturally, linguistically, and economically, sanctioning, starving into oblivion to destroy and conquer and control. So, Boba Fett builds an international family of the Sand people, the Gamorreans. I think the people who kind of look like pigs a little bit. The internally colonized people of the urban metropoles, the cyberpunk mod kids, Danny Trejo, who shows up in Boba Fett, the Wookiees. Danny Trejo is a friend of Robert Rodriguez, and I think he's been in most of the things that Robert Rodriguez has ever filmed. But anyway. So it's an international family of a variety of people. And also, Boba Fett is Pacific. Just as the actors, Boba Fett is Pacific Islander. Fennec Shand, played by Ming-Na Wen, is Asian, right? Chinese. And so it's an international... It's also, like, in terms of the actors and the actual people's ethnicities, it's an international... But also, in terms of, like, just within the world itself, right? It's a variety of people. Some people, sadly, largely... I don't want to give it away, but... They are, at least in spirit, they are still with Boba Fett, in that he takes with himself their way and builds based on the way that they interacted, right? Which is respecting, giving the kids respect, right? Treating them economically with respect to get the cyberpunk kids to work with him, right? And at the end, Ming-Na Wen says, Fennec Shand's like, the kids are like basically like, they don't, because they're very mouthy, right? They're like, the cyberpunk's like, fuck you, man, fuck authority, man, fuck you, screw you, I'm not gonna, I mean, not to say that you shouldn't screw the authority in the United States and Canada, because it's an empire, so I mean, those kind of don't really deserve much respect. But when there is an actual respectful when there has an elder in the beginning, they're like, oh, screw you, I'm not gonna listen to you. What are you? You have the big mask. You're up in your palace, you fancy, you know. What was it? I was like, I was gonna go, God save a Boba Fett. God save the Boba Fett. No, you know, it's like God save the Queen. You know, so that's not the best example of a punk song, but a lot of the punk is about disrespect of authority that doesn't deserve it, corporate, government, etc., because of their, you know, abuses, right? And in the beginning, they're very, you know, they're like also just teenagers acting out, and so it's like they're like, Boba Fett is like, Tamora Morrison and Ming-Na Wen, they're like 60, they're like late 50s, 60, early 60s, and these people are like 40 years younger than them, and they're kind of like, there's a kind of intergenerational thing. They're like, what are you gonna tell me to do, Dad, with your 40-year-old, you know, retro rocket pack and your you know, knight in shining armor helmet and your old ass 70s sci-fi knee-mounted homing missile launcher. What are you gonna do, Dad? I'm a cool young cyberpunk kid. I'm streaming on Twitch. Do you even know what uwu means, Dad? Do you even know what poggers is? No, you don't, Dad. You're an old freaking Gen X. You know. Anyway, so there's a little bit of that going on, and I kind of like that because that happens. So then old 60-year-old dad is telling the 20-year-old kids, hey, show me some respect. And they're like, fuck you. Why should we respect you? But it's kind of like, why should they? You have to earn it. You know? Also, so over time, and by the end, the mouthy cyberpunk punk-ass kids are like, they like listen to something that Ming-Na Wen says, and then the Fennec Shan, as they're not going out, but Fennec Shan and Boba Fett are, yeah, they're not. It's kind of like, if you think about it too long, you'd be like, yeah, why isn't there something? But you know, they're business partners, and they're like, they're in it for, well, Fennec is a master assassin, and Boba Fett is an ex-bounty hunter, so. You know, they probably be like, well, we have to work on ourselves maybe before we work on whatever's gonna happen there. But anyways, sorry, I just randomly shipped them for you. But Fennec Shan is like not super happy with them, and neither is because they're disrespectful, right, in the beginning. But by the end, they have all worked together, and the kids have now the cyberpunk kids have, like, the mods, to be specific, in Boba Fett, are more respectful, and Fennec Shan says, manners, I like this. And it's I feel like that's you know, that's kind of pointing out something that has been, that's part of the arc, right, of the story, is finding all these other peoples, right, the Gamorrean peoples, right, formerly also just people in a violent structure under the ruthless giant slug, asexually reproducing Jabba. I mean, no shade to ace people around there, but you know, Jabba the Hutt, the giant gangster, right, who has all of these oppressed people that are, you know, they're kind of threatened because they have to bow unto some crime lord. So they're working. The Gamorrean people are working for him, fighting for him, and then Boba Fett says, I can give you another way to do this, right? And I think he helps them. And then you respect me, and I will respect you, and I will give you what you need. And all I ask is that you work with me and you fight for me. And so the Gamorreans end up saving their butt at one point, and then they go to the cyber kids who are living in a cyberpunk dystopian Tatooine with not enough water to drink, and Boba helps them with that. And he says, I will respect you, I'll give you what you need. You have to work with us, then connect with me and respect me to cooperate together in this new Tatooine I'm building based on an indigenous people of the ocean / sand, the Tuscan people's indigenous win-win ways. I'm going to rebuild Tatooine in this way. I'm going to Mos Espa. Or is it Mos Espa? Yeah. And then he goes to the Wookiee, the giant, 8-foot massive gladiator, like ruthless killer, right? Famed for ripping off arms and legs and separating pike fish heads from their fish bodies and biting them in half. and he's like a massive beast of a warrior, right? Working for other Hutts, working for other win-lose barbarians with money and power at their helm, and mass violence doers, all paid off, right? With cuts from the CEO's table. And he says, what's the Wookiee's name? Chrysanthemum. So he says, Chrysanthemum, I will free you from these shackles. You don't have to go back to fighting every night for your supper. I will respect you, and all I ask is you respect me and you fight for me, like everyone else. You defend the Great Wall of Boba Fett's new win-win cooperative Tatooine. You know, it's the Great Wall. It's the Great Wall of win-win cooperation. It's kind of like a small version of a new Silk Road being constructed along a fallen, broken colonialism and capitalism ruined empire. It's kind of like looking at South America right now, or Africa right now, if you think about it. And Boba Fett is China coming down and going, work with us and work with us, and we will work with you, and we will push back the centuries and the billions and the raised forest and the gun fear-based mass traumas of the colonial and continued neo-colonial mentalities and structures that harm the peoples of Turtle Island, the peoples of South America, Central America, and finally North America. It might take a little longer, but you have the Death Star right on top, so it's one of the highest hanging fruit, let's say, unfortunately for indigenous people in what's called the United States, because the empire is right on top. So China is going to everywhere that it can reach first. And not just China, but the rest of the win-win cooperative networks, Group of Friends in Defense of the UN Charter, the countries that are for the freedom of Palestine, the countries that are against vaccine apartheid, the countries that are against Nazism and xenophobia and racism. You look at the map, U.S. and Ukraine, absolutely no, we need Nazis. Europe, I don't know. Canada, New Zealand, Australia, okay, right? The places that are the easiest to, you look at those maps, those are the places that are like, we don't want to be part of this racist, colonialist, capitalist structure, are the ones that are coming out first at the beginning of the rebuilding of an not intergalactic, that's an international family, right? I'm using that as a reference to Fast 9 also. But so if you look at each episode, Boba Fett goes to each of these people: Chrysanthemum, the Wookiees, right? The Gamorreans, the Sand, taking the lessons of the Sand people, and he has actual physically the weapons of the Sand people and the skills of the Sand people. There's even the monstrous, what is the thing that Danny Trejo has? The Rancor, yeah. I can't remember all these fucking words today. Anyways, so the Rancor is the character. The Rancor is the very large beast, right? You know what a Rancor is, right? You watch Star Wars, right? You don't watch Star Wars? What's wrong with you? No. Rancor is the giant, beast. It kind of looks like the dragony thing from Willow. I feel like it's got a giant noses above its eyeballs, nostrils above its eyeballs, massive teeth, huge claws. It's about 30 feet tall, very large, and it's the one that almost eats Luke. You know, almost eats Luke in Star Wars, one of the Star Wars. And the Rancor also, it's a creature, it's an animal, but Boba Fett also gives its non-sentient relatives, its non-human sentient relatives, also respect and calms it and treats it in a way, and it works with it to finally to learn to ride the Rancor. So which is saying its own thing, right? It's about how indigenous people and non-colonial people live in cooperation with the animals and plants and the Aina itself. I would actually argue that's part of something that's happening there. And if not, I'm reading that in. So it's 1:15. Okay, we got to get off shortly. So the Rancor, the Gamorreans, the Sand people, the Wookiee, several other peoples actually join in. The townspeople of what's called Freetown, right? People from Mandalorian. very fearful and worried about the Sand people who didn't cooperate with them. Not the most trusting people. Eventually, they also go, well, we have to unite. Now, there are other people that Boba Fett tries to unite. They're the other kind of companies, corporations. They're like the Microsoft and the Boeing. They're like the Democratic Party and the Republican. And he's like going around and going, hey, let's work together. They're basically the other gang, like crime families, right? Basically, or all the local oligarchs. He's trying to talk to them. Hey, we have to work against these pikes, and then they're like, no, I don't know if we want to do that. And they're like, well, we have to because they're gonna take over. And he's like, well, I'm not gonna. The other crime boss is like, I'm not gonna fight it. I'm not gonna fight this. And he's like, well, all I ask is stay out of the way. I will fight them myself, and you just stay out of the way. And they're like, okay. And you know, they say they're kind of like liberal politics. You know, kind of like Western so-called representative democracies. They look like they seem like they're gonna help you, and in the end, they're not really there for you, are they? You know, you get someone comes into power, and then the same thing repeats itself, and they stab you in the back, kind of like not getting built back better, not getting your student loans forgiven, not getting anything close to universal or affordable healthcare, not getting everything getting economically worse for you, right? And so intergalactic family is built, and then there are people that don't want to join it, and they have to resist against imperial colonial peoples. And yeah, I'm gonna get off. Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot. I gotta get back on soon. So I should probably definitely get off very soon. So I think I've kind of made the point. Intergalactic. So Boba Fett, number 1. I think it's a really good show. You should go watch it. The ending is super cool action, very intense, very Robert Rodriguez. And whether everything that I'm saying right now is in there or I'm reading this in actively and I'm projecting it into it, it is a good illustration of what it means for. And not to say that like that's what's gonna happen is everyone's gonna unite and we're gonna have a huge war against China and the rest of the the decolonized Belt Roads. Are just gonna have a huge war. That's not really how, you know. This is still a kids show, you know. For people who think that that's how everything functions in the world, I mean, it is gonna be a collective economic. Sometimes it is force, but more so than that, it's economic, it's political, it's cultural, it's informational, it's educational struggle between the win-lose ways, the colonial ways, barbaristic ways, capitalistic ways, colonialist ways, and cooperative, indigenous, win-win, mutual, beneficial, decolonial, non-capitalist ways of non-debt trap, which is what the West does, ways of developing and existing. And that will be a struggle. And it's not ideally sooner than later, finally, the West will cooperate. Jeffrey Sachs, Harvard, well-known long-time Ivy League and Harvard World Bank economist, World Bank, I think he was at one of the international Western financial, the mega entities. And he said, like, you know, in the end, the United States, to deal with COVID, like things I say, to deal with COVID, to deal with economic inequality, artificial intelligence and digital technologies that are causing huge opportunities, but huge risks, to deal with nuclear warfare generally, conflicts, all these problems will require the United States and China cooperating. We require the world's powers all cooperating. But that's finally what has to happen. It's one side that is not wanting to, obviously, the United States. But sooner or later, that side has to win because there's not really, but there's not really any other options. Like I'm saying, it's that or there's not going to be much of anything for anyone to make any money from. So it is going to be Don't Look Up. So which is too bad. But we're not going to do that because we're gonna do Intergalactic Family internationally and then maybe one day intergalactically, by respecting each other, we're cooperating. Sometimes having to have ideally more dialogue and conversation and less needless suffering, but sometimes that will happen. And if we do that, then we'll be on a better track. And that's why we're gonna have our panel later on today, is to stop this needless suffering and this needless win-lose imperialism. And that's why we're gonna have this panel in about 2 hours. So I gotta get off. Stop Asian Pacific Imperialism panel will be happening at 9 p.m. EST today. And yep, don't forget about that. I have open 60 tabs, so I'm gonna close those. I hope you learned something about a lot of things today. If not, I'll try better next time. I'm just looking at all these tabs like, holy crap, that's a lot of tabs. Everything that we do here is supported by Neofeud, which is a game that you can find on Steam and on itch.io. If you can leave us even a very short review, it is massively appreciated. If you can give us even a little bit of or if you want to wait for it's on sale, you can wishlist it, etc. Tell your friends, tell your comrades, tell your relatives, especially tell people who play video games about this if you can, as it does help us out a whole lot. It's like Disco Elysium, but with more cyberpunk characteristics, like I said. You can also find Neofeud on itch.io for Windows, for Mac, and for Linux. It is a game that is on sale there. It's also a game that you can give us the maximum revenue if you for the creators if you buy there, and we don't have you don't have to install Steam if you don't want to install Steam. You can also get decolonators again. Remember, we only need to if 9 more people get decolonators, we will have decolonators part 2. So consider grabbing that game where you play you kick capitalist colonizer butts out of Vietnam in retro arcade game glory, and it's a game made with myself, a native Hawaiian, and Luna Oi, and a native Vietnamese communist woman, which is starring a Vietnamese communist woman. So if you want that game, check it out on itch.io. Also, you can support us by checking out Woman, which is by Holly E. Argent, which is a book that is it's a 2,000 word story that's about the life of Mary, retold from an irreverent perspective of a woman raised in evangelical Protestant Christianity. So it's like a hot take on some the Canadians that are doing a lot of there's a lot of really bad stuff going on in Canada right now. Well, there's been a lot of things, but they're really visible right now, these right-wing convoy actors, and a lot of them are from and supported by communities that Holly has the misfortune of having to have had to deal with. So yeah, so that's that book. So if you want to check that book out, that book is you can get it for free, or you can give a donation for that, and it is appreciated greatly. Finally, Patreon. So you can also support us at patreon.com/Neofeud for ongoing support. You can also give us you get access to the Silver Spook Discord and updates on the games that we're currently working on and other things behind the scenes when you become a Patreon patron. So consider how much is the education worth to you, and edutainment, how much is all of that worth to you. Consider giving us some amount per month to help us out here to keep doing it. You can also support us at silverspookgames.octodon.social. You can follow at silverspookgames.octodon.social on Mastodon, a decentralized, non-capitalist, federated, open source social media platform like Twitter, but without billionaires, the Wall Street executives, the Pentagon, and Silicon Valley magnates determining what you see and what you don't see. However, while we have access to I don't have access to Carl's. Well, I can watch his tweets. But anyway, while we have access to the Death Star's satellites, you can follow me on Twitter at SilverSpookGuy for my personal takes on stuff. And you can follow Silverspook Games, and when the streams go live, of course. And Silverspook Games for games-related stuff. Like when Neofeud goes on sale, when other Silverspook games are coming out, and updates on the currently games being worked on. And you can also follow Terminus Cyberstar. Terminus Cyberstar is at Terminus C, an account for this game that is I'm the content director and lead writer on, which is a cyberpunk RPG set in the in a similar vein to Deus Ex and System Shock or Cyberpunk 2077. It's made by a handful of folks, including myself and a bunch of writers, artists, programmers, musicians, level designers, 3D modelers, etc. And it's a game that, like, so if you like the mods from Boba Fett with cyborg limbs and eye implants and biker gangs and bad attitudes and sleeveless jean jackets, I'm not sure, neon colors, primary colors, then you should check out Terminus Cyberstar, because it probably might be up your alley. You know what I'm saying? So Terminus Cyberstar, you can follow it there. And finally, thank you so much to all these people on the list right here. Dave, James Wheaton, Mingzil. Oh, sorry, I can't read them all, but thank you so much for your continued support. It is really, really appreciated. Thanks everybody for watching. And don't forget, we'll be back at 9 Eastern time, which is going to be 4 o'clock Hawaii time, on the Luna Oi channel. So remember, it's on the Luna Oi YouTube and Twitch channel, not the Silver Spook channel, because Luna has a bigger platform. Anyways, and thanks again, of course, to Holly, as always, for always important moderation and care work inside of our community here. Until next time, keep your mirror shades polished. Be excellent to each other. This is the way. And make sure to follow the stars to win-win cooperation and navigate ourselves to a better world for the people of the ocean, desert, forest, plains, and urban wastelands. Until next time, take it easy.